Since 1923, the creme de la creme of racing talent has gathered in central France for the world's greatest endurance motor race. For the first time ever in January, 200 of the fastest drivers from the real and virtual worlds, located in 116 different venues across 28 countries, will reunite for the second running of the Le Mans Virtual 2022. Hello everybody, welcome to Studio Gabriel. We're in the heart of Paris, ready for the second running of the virtual greatest endurance motor race on the planet. Le Mans Virtual 2022 is the culmination of the season, the Le Mans Virtual season, which has been running through the winter. And once more, 50 cars, 200 drivers and millions of fans around the world will join us and you to watch what happens. We're less than 30 minutes away from the start of the race. I'm Martin Haven, with me Ben Constanduros, Lewis McGlade, Chris McCarthy, Alex Brundle and Hayley Edmonds. We'll be here in the studio covering all the action from the green flag to the checker and beyond. So welcome everybody as we get ready for the start of this fantastic race. And Ben, as ever, Le Mans bringing plenty of talent and plenty of excitement.
The first edition was really the very biggest sim race we've ever seen in the world of sim racing and indeed in the world of racing as a whole, especially during our lockdown. So how do you better that than, in fact, making a series out of it? This is the culmination of the 2021-22 season, a huge prize pool for this race, but also for the championship overall, which took the very best of the real world and mixed it up a little bit with the virtual. So we were able to go to the Nordschleife in the virtual world. You couldn't do that in the real world. We're finishing off with a full 24-hour race. It's round 5 of the championship, but really, this is the one. A 50-car grid expanded from a 36-car full season entry, and of course 2 classes, GT cars and LMP cars. We have 4 drivers per entry, 2 pro drivers, 2 sim drivers, dynamic weather and day-to-night transitions, part of the R Factor 2 package on which we race today. It's going to be absolutely fascinating, and we're treating this as we would do the Le Mans 24 Hours. Let's have a word with the boss of motorsport games. Gerard Neveu is with Alex Brundle in race control.
Yes, thank you, Ben. I'm sitting here in the epicenter of Le Mans Virtual Racing. Everybody preparing for the event, not least executive producer for Motorsport Games, Gerard Neveu. Gerard, we're coming back after a successful event in 2020. What's new this year?
Okay, we can consider that we have a fantastic grid. Definitely the upgrade of the grid is very impressive with the top sim racing, the top manufacturers, the top sim racer, the top racer. So it should provide an amazing race. And that's the reason why definitely the ACO and Motorsport Games are very involved in this program. Another point very important comparing with last time, 250,000 euro providing as a prize money pool by Motorsport Games for the best competitors of this championship and this race today. Finally, what we have to never forget, the target for ACO and for Motorsport Games is to deliver in 23 a fantastic dedicated game for all the fans about Le Mans. But now it's time for the biggest esports sim racing event of the year. So let's start the engine for the second edition of Le Mans 24 Hours.
The biggest sim race of the year in virtual terms, in endurance terms, but it's a culmination of a great series of virtual races. Let's check out the Le Mans Virtual Series in review.
The season started at Monza, everybody behaving themselves in the first chicane. RAG and Real Team showed early pace, and it was Porsche versus BMW in GTE. RAG were not destined for a good result, but Real Team and Baicoles battled door handle to door handle for the lead. Action all the way in both classes, disaster for WRT, but victory in LMP for Real Team and in GTE for Porsche. At Spa, it was a 6-hour encounter, and once more, RHG were in the frame. Redline claiming the early lead as championship leaders Real Team crashed out. WRT's woes continued on home soil, and Yas Heat, one of the victims of Eau Rouge. Closing stages, RHG forced a splash and dash, but Redline stayed out and headed to victory in LMP and in GTE. An astonishing success, claiming both classes. Even the first corner of the Nordschleife proved a little tough for some. Bump drafting was the way to go, and staying off the curbs, as GPX Williams discovered. BMW's bump drafting caused major problems, as did moves that were never going to happen. Safety car came out with server issues, the race restarted. Argy-bargy all the way down the grid. Victorious among the chaos and confusion, Redline and R8G. Over the vicious bumps of Sebring, the dramas started early, as did BMW's rivalry. Wolves were caught out at sunset, BMWs were caught out by each other. Redline picked up a penalty for avoidable contact, FDA crashed out of fourth, and a fierce battle raged with Real Team and R8G. The LMPs were bump drafting over the bumps catching out GPX Williams. But after 500 punishing miles, our only distance race was won by the #1 Rebellion Williams Esports and by Redline.
Some of the very biggest names in the world of esports racing and some of the very biggest names in the world of real racing coming together for the Le Mans Virtual. And we treat them equally, and we treat them with the same respect that we do in the Le Mans 24 hours for the real world. And if that means bringing a real world team of experts into race control to manage, and of course led by the man himself that has race controlled every single WEC event so far. It's Eduardo Freitas at the helm as race director.
Yes, Ben, and I'm on my absolute best behaviour here. Eduardo Freitas coming to adjudicate this virtual 24 hours of Le Mans. Give us a bit of a feel for the specific challenges of being the race director in a virtual edition of this race.
Well, good afternoon to all of you. A race is a race, be it virtual or not. Here we don't have to deal with safety, which is a huge burden that's taken out from race control. The team here will concentrate on driver behavior on track, following the regulations, driving stints, contacts, interpreting things as they happen. We'll be monitoring the weather. The forecast says it should be dry, but one never knows. In Le Mans, it can have a switch there. But we will be concentrating basically on how drivers will behave. Qualifying proved it should be a tough race. The results were quite tight between the leaders of each class. So we're in and prepared for a 24-hour sprint race, and let's hope we can all enjoy it in a fashionable way.
Well, we have the best of sim races, the best of real racers joining us. Even the real race director is getting involved. But how can you get involved in this virtual 24 hours of Le Mans? Here is Hayley Edmonds to tell you more.
That's right, we want to make this event as interactive as possible. So we want to hear from you. Join the conversation. As you can see just by my left-hand side, Le Mans Virtual is the hashtag. Use it on any kind of social media channel. And our experts behind us, we've got social media managers from WEC, from 24 Hours of Le Mans, from ELMS, and from Le Mans Virtual. So we'll be filtering out any kind of funny photos or any anecdotes or any questions you may have for our experts that are just behind us. Don't hesitate in asking them. We'll do our best to answer them. And of course, we've got some support from Alonso. We'll chat to him just later, who says good luck to everyone taking part in the 24 Hours of Le Mans Virtual. We are, of course, in France, so everyone please stand for the French national anthem.
Won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2015.
So as you can see here in the studio, Gerard mentioned earlier, 116 sim rigs will be taking part. Well, no, they'll be used throughout the course of this event, of which we have 4 here in the studio, which is fantastic because we'll be able to chat to the drivers when they're not driving and just get their feedback, their general, how they're feeling about the race thus far. As you can see, there's Juan Pablo Montoya, who's competing with his son, which is a first for you both. That'd be fantastic to watch. But yeah, we have a variety. We have the sim racers, as you can see, just getting ready for the start of the race just behind us. And if you have any questions for them as well, please don't hesitate. Use the hashtag Le Mans Virtual, and we will ask them throughout the course of the race. So, and as I said, we would Fernando Alonso, who better here to talk to us about the Circuit de l'Estartart, to take us through than, of course, 2-time Le Mans winner and F1 driver Fernando Alonso. So let's watch his onboard.
So Le Mans, probably the longest and the most beautiful circuit around the globe. We're here on the main straight. It's a long corner going into 10-1. You try to pass the corner before braking for the Dunlop chicane. Use all the curbs, maximizing, but obviously in all endurance racing you have to take care of the car as well. So the way you take the curb and how much you take is always a compromise between having the car healthy until the end. High-speed corners in 10.5, 10.6, and then you go to 10.7, Petit Rouge, where you can really launch the car with the maximum speed. It's a very high-speed corner, around 200 kilometers per hour. And then you go to the section of the very long straights, which are obviously the DNA of Le Mans. These long straights, maximum and top speed, you're running with very low downforce cars, so the top speeds are very high, around 330 kilometers per hour. Heavy brakings for the triple chicane, the first one on Le Mans here, the right, left, right, and then another very long straight is perfect opportunities for different categories to mix a little bit and to have all your overtakings done in this part of the circuit. It's quite smooth. There's no big problems of the bottoming or anything like that, so no big concerns on the car, even if you are at those speeds. You get to the second chicane, this time it's left, right, left. There are some opportunities to pass some of the GT cars on the outside of the last corner. Another long straight. The circuit here is a little bit not flat, so the central line, it gets a little bit bottom in the car, so you have to choose or left or right to save the plank. And then you go to a very tight corner, probably the slowest of the circuit. Right corner, you take all the curb, and then you launch the car from very low speed until Indianapolis corner. So all this long straight is a combination of the top speed of the car, but also the launch you get from the corner before. The traction is very important. And it's a beautiful part of the track that is ended up in the Indianapolis corner. Quite loaded the car on the entry, on the right corner, and then heavy braking to stop the car. A lot of accidents happen here. When the track gets damp or wet, it's very easy to go off there, so it's a corner to maybe take some margin when the track is not in perfect conditions, or when at night the visibility is not great. And Arnache, very slow speed corners. You launch the car and you head into the last part of the circuit. The Porsche corner is a combination of high speed corners, very high, around 220, 230 kilometers per hour in all these corners. So you can really feel the downforce of the cars. You can feel the tire wear as well here. You are damaging the tires a lot. It's a very tricky place to overtake GTs, so yeah, it's definitely the most demanding part of the Le Mans circuit, the Porsche corner. And then you arrive to the fourth chicane, the last 4 corners of the circuit. You have to commit quite early here because the visibility is not great, so you have to guess more or less where the curb is, and attack all the curbs, always taking care of the car, but very aggressive last part of the circuit. And that's it, Le Mans. the best circuit in the world and the most famous race in endurance racing.
Great view of Le Mans there, virtually courtesy of a two-time winner, one of only 3 men ever to win Le Mans twice in one season. Of course, during Super Season a couple of years back for Toyota Gazoo Racing. And Fernando Alonso competed in the virtual Le Mans a couple of years ago. He's had some post-operative surgery actually in the last couple of days, so he is feeling a little bit under the weather. Possibly not the best place to be racing, but he'll definitely be supporting his former teammates and everybody else because he was so invested in this race a couple of years ago. And Ben, this circuit, the virtual track here at Le Mans, is exactly a replica. It doesn't just sort of look a bit like it. It has been digitally scanned the entire 13 kilometers, and every bump, every camber change, every curb height is precise to how the track exists in real life.
Yeah, scanned by a laser, millimeter precision, every single bump, as you say. So the drivers should be really feeling exactly what the real world drivers would feel. Of course, Le Mans is a living being as well. Most of the second half of the circuit, where we're just about to arrive to here, is public road, and that obviously alters every single year with the trucks that drive down it. So that laser scan is from a couple of years old, but it is exactly how it was at that point. And of course, the actual layout hasn't really changed for the last couple of years at all, but the trucks do some damage when they drive all the way down to Arnage, is public road.
Yeah, and particularly in the rain, as you do on the highway, any country you drive in, when you're down the Mulsanne Straight, you will find those little grooves left by the tyres start to fill up with water. So the circuit is the same. The challenge remains the same, staying awake, staying alert, and staying 100% on it the entire time. As it has been since they introduced the chicanes on the Mulsanne Straight, this has become 100% a sprint race. There is no more taking it easy or relaxing, particularly against a field of this quality. We've got the reigning Formula One world champion, we've got the reigning IndyCar champion, our champions from 2 years ago have returned, and qualifying gave us a fantastic indication of how close this is going to be. Lewis McGlade, 3 cars at the end of the best lap, covered by 39 thousandths of a second. It was tight.
Very, very tight indeed. You know, all these Dutch drivers, Jeffrey Rietveld, who was the one that was battling at the front of this group in the blue car, Max Verstappen in that black and red, the black and pink one at the rear end of that being the Mercedes, and that one is Bonner House, and these all over the 13.6 kilometres, as you quite rightly said, separated by 0.039. The top 2 separated by 0.002. Now, we don't get to see that often, but we are going to see a very clear image as to what a gap that small actually looks like.
As you can see here, Max Verstappen made up a lot of his time on the brakes into all of the corners, into the chicanes, and then the others, perhaps with a bit more experience of these cars on this track, gained on the exit. Max into the closing stages, super brave, super committed in the Porsche curves, as you would have to be in real life, and challenging hard, and then out of the final chicane, just gets his nose in front and at the line. That is 2 thousandths of a second between the top 2. It is literally the depth of the splitter. Drat, says Max Verstappen, beaten to pole. Well, if the race is anything like as exciting as qualifying, then we're going to have a fantastic 24 hours. And 2 years ago, the first virtual Le Mans was just door handle to door handle all the way through. So let's take a look at our starting grid. Max Verstappen, the reigning Formula One world champion, starts on the outside of the front row of the grid, but he did lose out. Pole position went to the number 70 Real Team Hydrogen Red Line car, and that will be started by Felipe Drugovich. So he is the man who will get the best view. And then looking all the way through, we have a huge field of LMP cars. They are all in the Oreca 07 LMP2 car. They've all got the same Gibson engine. They all have the same Goodyear tyres. So the difference is what the drivers, what the setup that the teams can work on, and the strategy as well. Chris McCarthy, how they use their fuel, how they use their tyres, how they use their drivers indeed is going to make a big difference in the overall race.
Yeah, you'll see on the grid, a lot of the drivers are going to be ones you're familiar with because the professional drivers are the ones starting. And just to give you an idea of the kind of championships we're having represented in the top 10 alone, F1 versus F2 on the front row, Formula E drivers, Formula Regional European Championship drivers, and a European truck racing champion as well, all in the top 10 alone.
And when we get into our GTE class, we have 4 new teams there, including ProDrive. Mercedes-AMG Petronas have their car for the first time ever, an official Mercedes-AMG entry. They're in the P2 class as well, so look for the number 67 Orica. That is going to be undoubtedly one that has got a story behind it. In our GTE class, again, 4 new entries, and our pole position has gone to not a Porsche, not a BMW, but to a Corvette. Redline Racing Esports with Dennis Lynn, the man on pole position in that Corvette. And that's going to be a fascinating battle, because it's not just about winning Le Mans. Of course, that's the one everybody wants to win, but it's also about winning the championship. And Chris, the points here at Le Mans are double points compared to any other race, and so they have a huge effect on how the title is going to end up in the Le Mans Virtual Series.
Yeah, in the LMP class, there's 4 points between the top 3, so it's a winner-takes-all scenario between those guys. And then in the GTE class, there's around 20 points, 25 points between the top 3 as well. So you'd say any one of those 3 could go and take the title. And the wildcards are going to play a part in that as well, in separating the margin of points between 2 teams. If they're first and third, then the margin gets bigger.
So there is our grid. 50 cars, 200 drivers are waiting for the most famous words in motorsport.
1 minute board on the grid.
For our 50 starting drivers, for all their teammates, just as in June, for the drivers who will start the real 24 Hours of Le Mans. Sweaty palms, racing hearts, dry mouths, the formation lap gets underway. It'll take around 9 minutes to come back to the line, ready for the start of the 2022 Le Mans 24 Hours Virtual. And boy, the anticipation is going to be huge. Ben Constantiouris, this is always one of those moments at Le Mans where everybody is on the edge of the seat. Whether you're in the grandstand there, whether you're on the banking, whether you're around the circuit, whether you're in one of the teams in the garages, in the VIP suites, or actually in a car, it's still a massive moment of anticipation. And I think today is no different.
An exceptional atmosphere every year at Le Mans. Even when it was empty the year that we were there under COVID regulations, there was still this incredible anticipation. And when we were sitting here in the year that Le Mans should have happened in June but couldn't because of COVID, we had that same feeling because of the crowds, because of the 200 people around the world participating in this. Let's go down to Alex, who's got one. Pablo Montoya getting ready for the start.
Well, the tension is building here on our little virtual grid in the middle of the studio. Father and son Montoya joining us here in the studio to race the virtual 24 Hours of Le Mans. I see you just loading in for the start. Juan, how are you feeling about this one?
Pretty good. You know, I mean, I've done a few laps, not crazy mental laps. I feel pretty good. You know, for what we've done is okay. We're, you know, most important to have a good time with Sebastian and the other 2, you know, kids start racing with us. So it should be a cool race.
Little bit of a dry run for later in the year when you're going to race together at the Sebring 12 Hours. Are you going to enjoy it as a father and son experience?
Yeah, I think that's going to be really special. I think here is a good warm-up of working together and everything and get angry at each other. But nothing like the real thing at Sebring, so it should be fun.
Montoya's ready to rock and roll, guys. Follow them if you can all the way through the 24-hour race.
Well, father-son combinations have been a thing for years in endurance racing. Great to see Juan Pablo and his son Sebastian here. And of course, they're in one of the new entries in LMP. That is the LM Cup Champions entry. The 2 pro drivers are the Montoyas, and the guest drivers, Luca D'Amelio and Christopher Hoogfeldt, who were the top 2 in the Le Mans Cup Virtual that was the support race series to the Le Mans Virtual Series. And Lewis, those 2 drivers, not part of major esport teams, earned a spot on the grid, sharing with the Montoyas and racing up against the Formula One world champion, Max Verstappen, and the rest. And of course, none of this could happen without the backing of the ACO.
That's right, I'm joined here by Pierre Fillon, President of the ACO. Now, Pierre, I mean, the edition in 2020 was a huge success. What were your expectations for this 2022 24 Hours of Le Mans Virtual?
Well, you know, after the big success of the first edition, it was important for the SEO to continue to develop this event and to develop our new eSport championship, the Le Mans Virtual Series. And eSport is now an important part of all of our championship in the SEO. This event is already a success with the fantastic grid we have today. The other target is to promote the real 24 hours. And you know that next year we will celebrate the centenary of the 24 hours. And maybe the last target is to prepare the future. And the leading car you will see in a few minutes to launch the race will be our hydrogen prototype, the H24, and hydrogen, which is energy of the future.
Well, that was going to be my second question, actually. It's the H24 car. You're really putting it out there. You're really concentrating on multiple areas of development as the ACO. But, you know, how important is esports to you?
You know, Le Mans is an innovation laboratory, and we are here to develop the future of the mobility. And this hydrogen is the future for us, because in 25 we will have a car able to win Le Mans in the 24 hours. And it's important to use the e-sport to promote this technology and to keep this spirit of innovation.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Pierre.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Pierre Fillon, the president of the ACO, the Automobile Club de l'Ouest, of course, is the group based in Le Mans who, since 1923, have been running this great endurance motor race. Originally, it was set out for manufacturers to prove that cars, automobiles, were reliable, could drive in day and night conditions when they were thought to be expensive and unreliable. But since 1923, Le Mans has been at the forefront of new mechanical innovations. Well, you just saw the H24 car, hydrogen-powered, heading out on track. It's going to be a very different proposition from anything we've seen before. But, of course, we've seen petrol, diesel, electric, hybrid race at Le Mans. We've seen front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive. We've seen all sorts of different sports cars, prototypes, over nearly a century of racing. And come 2023, that is going to be a massive milestone for the ACO, the centenary of the first ever Grand Prix d'Endurance at Le Mans. And of course, in those days, the track ran into the Pontlieu area in the centre of the city of Le Mans. It was all gravel and barely metalled roads, so it was a very different beast from what we see these days. But again, pushing the forefront of technology, and that is what endurance racing, and that's what Le Mans is all about. That's why the manufacturers come then to prove new technology, whether it's engine technology, lighting, tyres, brakes, electronics, everything here. This is the most destructive test bench you can possibly use for your technology.
And we're really excited to see the future of Le Mans over the next couple of years grow and grow as more manufacturers join a new regulation sets that we will kind of start to see progress in June this year. And we do have the safety car now leading the cars down the Mulsanne straight. There's Max Verstappen getting himself ready as the man who'll line up on the front row. But in second, let's chat now to the FIA president, Mohammed bin Sulayem.
Dear competitors, dear friends, and all the eSport community, I'm full of praise for what has been achieved with the virtual Le Mans event. I want to thank Gerard Neveu and his team at Motorsport Games and, of course, the FIA World Endurance Championship promoter for their great work. To have stars like the Formula One World Champion Max Verstappen and IndyCar champion Alex Palou competing together is so impressive. Esports is an era in which the FIA has been increasingly active over the last couple of years. We have a dedicated department supporting our ASNs and running grassroots level esports competition and attracting more people to motorsport. I would like to wish everyone involved in this year's virtual Le Mans a fantastic event.
Good words from the brand new president of the FIA. In fact, he was newly installed more recently even than Max Verstappen was installed as the Formula One world champion. So everybody on their formation laps. There's two different generations of F1 racer, Max and Juan Pablo. And both, of course, keen to make sure that the machinery steps up. So Max Verstappen starts on the outside of the front row, and you heard the president of the FIA mention the IndyCar champion, Alex Palou. He's racing here as well, one of the prototype cars, 966, the Team Ford Zilla Oreca. So he shares with Luke Browning, Nuno Pinto and Gianmarco Ferrucci. He is on the formation lap as well. And another one perhaps to pick out is car number 1, our winners from 2020, the inaugural Le Mans 24 Hours Virtual Rebellion GPX Esports. This season, Louis Delatraz, one of the original winners, and so nearly a winner of Le Mans in June, one lap away. Augustin Canapino, Nikodem Wisniewski and Kuba Brzezinski, those are the guys who are in the number 1 car.
And that's just one change from the lineup that won 1.5 years ago. Augusto Canapino replacing Rafael Marcello, who won at that time. Canapino is better known for his sim racing exploits than he is for all the championships that he's won over in Argentina. He is so fast, part of the Williams Esports team, and bringing him into a winning car means that that car is even faster than it was before. But Chris, the level of this race versus what we saw last time is actually even higher.
Yeah, well, Canapino, don't think he hasn't done this race before, because he has. He was in one of the other cars. He's literally just been promoted up to the championship leading car because of that experience and that success in esports that you mentioned. So they have a full team that have all done this race, 3 of them doing it together and 1 of them in a sister car.
Well, we've got 8 new teams in LMP. Pescarolo, one of the most famous sports car names, they're represented, and they are here in our studio. Car number 16, the Pescarolo eSport car, is here. The LM Cup champions, the Montoyas, are racing here. Veloce Esports, under their own banner, entering a car. Mexico Racing Team, an all-Mexican lineup. The big banner name there, of course, is Mima Rojas Sports Car Race, and sometime IndyCar driver Duquesne with Prima Sports. They're here in the studio as well. Gabby Aubrey, one of the drivers here. Alpine come, and of course, that has been pushed along by Fernando Alonso as well. There's the view from the number 1 Rebellion GPX Esports car, and they have got plenty of opportunity to go out and potentially repeat their victory from 2020.
And the last car that you didn't mention that is new is Mercedes. Mercedes-Benz bringing in a works team to this race. The first time Mercedes have entered Le Mans for over 50 years, and it's great to have not a pseudo-works team. This is coming from the factory, the F1 factory, based out of them. They've brought in works Mercedes drivers to represent them in the Pro, and of course they are already represented well in the sim racing world by Jarno Opmeer, who has won the F1 Esports Championship for them, and Bono Huis has won lots of championships on R Factor 2, which is our platform. So fantastic to have Mercedes here, and then of course we already know about the representation in GT, which is, well, we were just having a look at them, Porsche and BMW and Ferrari.
Well, Porsche and BMW really is the story of the title battle. Ferrari, with the Ferrari Drivers Academy, the FDA Esports team, have not quite had the luck or the pace at every race that some of their rivals have. Porsche's factory cars have throughout the season raced in the regular Porsche factory livery, but here they've got a sort of split personality, either the Joker from the Batman series or Day-Night, whichever you prefer it. That's the half black, half white livery you can see on those 2 cars. So the winners back in 2020, that was the 92 Porsche team. They are back on the grid as well. Anchan Juven, one of their factory young drivers, Sage Karam, Josh Rogers, Tommy Usgaard. There's an all-female crew as well. We need to mention the W Series crew. They're one of the 4 new teams that are in GTE. So W Series have entered Fabian Volbend, Isla Agren, Emily Jones, and Lubov Erisakov. Yeah, we'll come back to Lubov. I knew I would fluff that.
Lewis can do it.
Ozratskovskaya.
There you go. I knew I'd fluff that the first time out. And our championship leaders, Redline, the 71 BMW. And this is... It is so close, and it is so possible, as ever at Le Mans, for things to go really, really wrong. This is going to be, particularly if you're in a championship battle, as applies to everybody else, the rules always apply. They're the same at Le Mans. Stay out of the pits, don't hit anything, just do the laps. 23 hours, still be on the lead lap, in position to battle for the win, and then hope that Lady Luck smiles on you. And for everybody at WRT who knows what that feeling is all about, yeah, and Louis Delatraz, one of our winners 18 months ago, knows all about that from this year. But the formation lap is almost over. We are seconds away from the start of the 2022 Le Mans 24 Hours Virtual.
Nice and slow through the forward chicane at the end of the lap. Max Verstappen on the inside line heading towards the first kink, but he has been jumped by teammate Filip Drugovich, and Drugovich is going to lead through the first kink, but there is a braking zone left-hander under the bridge for the first time. And will Drugovich look to Verstappen, look to the inside? Was there contact further back? I think there was a little bit of contact in the LMP class, so everyone seems to have still faced the right direction, but the front two are getting away, and here comes Verstappen into the lead of the race already. Drugovich respectful to his pseudo teammates, and Max Verstappen leads Le Mans.
Through come the GTE field. And again, the Porsches that started at the front challenging the Red Bull car. So the Corvette slips back. It's the 91 car that goes ahead. Mitchell de Jong ahead of Dennis Lind, and Chan Juven in the 92 Porsche lying in third place. Yeah. And a great start from Max Verstappen.
Drugovich is struggling here. Look at him dropping back even into the clutches of the Mercedes. This is not going well for the real team hydrogen redline car. Max Verstappen's already got an enormous lead, but it is the other redline car that's dropping backwards.
So was there contact? Has he picked up damage? Damage is active. Might have been a little nudge at the start, but it might be something other than that. Maybe they've just not got their tyre pressures absolutely spot on.
I think more confidence at this point. Even now, even right now, you've got nerves are running. I know, real world drivers, etc., but nerves are running. Danny Juncadella and Max Verstappen, they're not bothered about that. They don't have that pressure on their shoulders. They know what they're doing in this scenario, and they have gone.
Juncadella needs to get on top of Max Verstappen's pace here. They cannot let Max Verstappen get into a comfort zone where he just cruises at a faster pace than everyone else. We've seen it time and time again in the sim racing world and in the Formula One world. When Verstappen is at his best, he's untouchable. Danny Juncadella in these early laps needs to get onto his tail, get into a slipstream as well, so they can maybe even start pulling each other along and separate themselves from the pack. We aren't expecting this race to run clean all the way through the 24 hours. We do have a safety car. We have the possibility of red flags as well. And of course, weather is active. We could see rain. But certainly at this stage, don't let Max get comfortable. Here's the other Red Bull, another Red Bull car in the GT category. Seb Jobe set the fastest time for pole position, but it's not him in the car at the moment.
It looks like we've had a problem for WRT. They've dropped right down the field. Franco Colapinto in that car, and Fabian Volvend also has dropped right back. Hasn't actually come through the first sector. If that's a timing issue, then I'm not too sure, but it could be the W Series and WRT both in trouble in the early stages. We did see almost contact as well between the Mercedes and Max Verstappen, and now the gap is coming down. Juncadella in that Mercedes is chasing down Max Verstappen. Ben.
Change for the lead. No, not quite. Dennis Lind looking to the outside of Mitchell de Jong going into the Porsche curves, and there was no space. Sorry, that's Indianapolis, and there was no space for him. Lind in the car that Sebastian Jobe qualified, but it does look as though right now he's the faster of the two, and Mitchell de Jong just trying to play himself in slowly here with his teammate just behind Dennis Lind in third position.
And without trying to burst their bubble too much, there are 3 teams that have picked up a penalty already. This is due to infractions with their driver usage. They've got 3 sim drivers and 1 pro driver. We need to have a minimum of 2 pro drivers. The penalty for that, which goes the way of the 111, the Red Bull Racing Esports car, one of the Butler Power Team Project 1 cars, the number 56, and of course the Williams Esports number 5, all receive a penalty for breaching this rule. It is a 6-minute stop and hold penalty, which sounds enormous, but that 111 car, trust me, that Red Bull, keep your eye on it in GTE, it can come back from that.
Well, that is the story that we're going to have to follow, because obviously they will be in a different camera shot, on a different page, on a different, script for everybody else. And they knew coming in that they were going to have that issue, and as a result, they will have had to plan for it. And so, as ever, plan A, which is what they were thinking of, is going to have to change, and they've now gone on to plan B to deal with that 6-minute hold. And they don't have to take it immediately. It doesn't have to be at the end of lap 1 or lap 2 or anything. It can be just a hold when they come in for their first routine stop. So let's talk a little bit then about potential strategies. Lewis, in LMP, we're looking at potentially a 10-lap stint, 35-ish minutes for our LMP cars, and potentially double stinting the tyres with the drivers.
Yeah, now the way this is going to work, obviously because they've done a full formation lap, this is where things become a little bit awkward in the prototype category. They might, some might come into the pit lane, might even be able to save to get to that 10th lap. Normally on standard running, 10 laps is absolutely fine. We'll take a look again at the start. Then watch out for the WRT car that received a bit of contact. One of the GPX Williams cars also received contact in the background at turn 1, but we might be able to see what happened to WRT.
Well, up into the Dunlop curve, there was quite a lot of argy-bargy there. Was that the WRT car got knocked out wide, I think. Not sure who drilled them from the side.
This looks like a very easy pass for Max Verstappen. That almost looks as though Red Line had worked that out already, had discussed it pre-race. That was a lot of contact.
That's what happened to WRT.
Oh, and back onto the race. Oh, it's Bicoles. That's the 444. The Floyd Bicoles Burst Esports car they've gone into. And once again, this season, the WRT without a rear wing, that is, I think, 3 from
Monza and Spa, so the
and
first.
The Nordschleifer
and the Nordschleifer,
4 out of 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
But what does that mean for Bicoles? Surely they would have picked up damage from that kind of contact.
That 444 would have done, a lot on the, particularly the front right of the car. So that's not ideal.
Yeah, they're running in 7th with Sergio Sette camera in the car at the moment. But Philippe Denez in the Marla is in the pits. Franco Colapinto is also down the order as well, of course. Fabien Volven still not showing up, so perhaps a timing glitch for the W Series team. But Mitchell de Jong, purple sector 1, obviously starting to pull a little bit of a gap, but Ben, the fight for second getting very, very close.
Well, yeah, it was the fight for first, wasn't it? Dennis Lim was challenging Mitchell de Jong, but in that last couple of sectors, he's checked out, and now Dennis Lim under pressure from the second of the Porsche eSports cars. They are racing in their effectively factory outfit with a stream themselves, and here comes the second car around the outside. Is there going to be space to do that, to sweep around the outside, to get the inside in the braking zone into Indianapolis? Yes, there is. Nice move, Porsche 1-2 now.
Yeah, now the 71 really need to get onto this, but sorry about championship stuff. That instant we saw as Dennis Lind goes once again on the attack and trying to get his way past a little bit wide though. Whoa, that's going to be a little bit tight for Juven, who's gone out towards the barrier. And then watch out for the BMW Team Redline car. The Bicoles car that was involved in that instant, by the way, was the number 4, the championship leader in prototype.
Well, there's the 71 BMW, the red and black, trying to fight its way through the Red Bull car right in front. Anchan Juven, you saw in the inset in the lower picture, more contact. Okay, rule 1 of Le Mans, what is it? Don't hit things.
Right, so
rule 2, see rule 1.
It's a 24-hour race. Rudy Van Buren in the BMW there, he actually raced not the Le Mans 24-hour race, but he raced in the support series for the Le Mans 24 Hours in the Porsche Carrera Cup France, amalgamation of all different things.
Everything.
So he has real-world experience at Le Mans, but of course has come from the virtual world. Huge amounts of titles over the last couple of years for Rudy Van Buren, trying to translate that into a real-world career, but leading our virtual championship as well. Getting themselves up ahead of that Porsche with all that fracas. It's all allowing Mitchell de Jong to check out, though.
Well, our 2 class leaders are gone, aren't they? Mitchell de Jong in GT and in LMP, Max Verstappen. They are some way ahead. 2 cars in the pits at the moment. Number 10 Marlow Racing Team from LMP and the WRT 31 car. We saw the reason for that. There is Max Verstappen, your race leader. And the other car that is shown as stopped on track is the W Series car. So Fabien Volven started that car. So that all-female entry has had 0 luck so far. Didn't get round to complete the first lap. So hopefully they will be able to sort themselves out. Mercedes AMG, well, right now, I'm sure there'll be a few people interestingly staring at the screens in Brackley trying to work out what the split times mean. And
it's Mercedes versus Max Verstappen again.
Here we go again, okay. However, at least we know the race director is on our side this time. Now, listen, the deal is, at the end of qualifying, there was a little timing glitch, and as they came across the line, Max Verstappen was briefly shown as being part of Mercedes AMG, and he went online afterwards to say, look, I don't mind you putting me in the wrong team, but literally the least likely team is the one that you put me in. Yeah, any other team but them. So he hasn't lost his sense of humour, and he certainly hasn't lost any pace. In traffic, let's look at this little battle as the Corvette shapes up. In traffic, yeah, Chris, you know, you and Lewis, you both do a lot of sim racing. In the real world, you have a better view of what's around you and more of a sort of feel for it maybe even than in the sim world. And for the pro drivers, I think that is one of the harder aspects of fast-moving metal in the sim race, is that you don't quite have that same feeling of who's around you.
Well, I'd say some of the rigs out there are built so well now that, you know, triple screens around you, you can look physically to your right or left and see what's alongside you. So I'd say it's as close as it could be now with the technology we have, and we'll look at some of that we have in the studio throughout the 24 hours. So the drivers are using the rigs more and more now in between races to keep themselves in shape, especially if they don't have access to the sims down at their teams all the time. But this is a great battle we have going on. It looks now like the second and third place are starting to work together. So we saw down the Mulsanne Straight that they were pushing each other along, just trying to close a gap to the leader, because that lead Porsche is gone.
Yeah, and they've got to be very, very careful with this. And look at that.
Juven being very brave on the outside in the slower part of Indianapolis, but going deep on the inside in the quick bit. That's a real trust in your tyres, and goes through for third on the Corvette. And you can see the next Porsche right behind having a charge as well. Now the leaders of the prototype cars are already coming out of Tertre Rouge onto the Mulsanne as our GT leaders head down towards the Porsche curve. So there's already half a lap between them. Normally in the real world you get about 4 laps. It's 3 wide. Everybody close your eyes on the pit wall. And the Corvette comes back through. But what happens in the battle of the Porsches for third? Factory car hangs on. There's Juven down at the bottom. Porsche Junior driver in last year's Mobil 1 Super Cup. Race winner, but has yet to claim the title.
Don't need to do this. Don't need to be fighting and compromising your lap pace, because all of this battling will slow them up and it'll allow the gaps to grow. And okay, they can sit in the slipstream and perhaps help themselves a little bit. Right now, the leader in both categories have a really easy go of things.
Yeah, and sitting in the slipstream only works if you are sitting in the slipstream and not actively trying to outbrake the guy in front of you. You've got to have that self-discipline. There's the 65 Panis car, the blue and gold. And again, that is one of our strong driver lineups. We've got some phenomenal driving talent, both in the real and the virtual world, in a lot of these teams. Just mouth-watering the number of great drivers.
I was going to say a word for Fordzilla, who we see on screen. They started on row 8. Luke Browning, who raced in the ADAC-F4 Championship last year, finishing in the top 3. He's got that car all the way up to 5th place, and now he's staring at Felipe Drugovich just a little bit down the road, who races in F2. So great work from Luke Browning, and a mention, of course, I don't think we've mentioned him much yet, James Baldwin solidly keeping Veloce Esports in 3rd. He's just behind Danny Juncadella in the tow and being very, very patient in his approach. But this is great driving from that car ahead. Luke Browning, which carries, of course, our IndyCar champion, Alex Palou.
And that, Fordzilla, is effectively a works Ford entry.
Yeah.
Fordzilla is the Ford team. You don't see them flying the flag too much. They don't vigorously fly that Ford flag across sim racing as a whole, but when it comes to the big events, they are there, and Fordzilla, great to see them, and with such a great lineup too, as you mentioned.
2 more teams in the pits, the number 57 Project One, as well as the 88 Proton.
Oh, rocket down the inside. Oh,
wow.
That's our Le Mans Virtual Cup car, the Cup champions.
Well, that's
to the barrier.
That's Juan Pablo, who's sitting in the studio right now, smiling. Apparently enjoyed that.
Well, look, he's in a cluster of a dozen cars covered by the same amount of time, or on the same amount of tarmac. You would normally find 2 or 3. Red, white, and blue. There is the Graf Racing entry. That's one of our Le Mans only entries, Graf by ProSimu. And Juan Pablo, right in the thick of it. And that is so much him. That was always his racing career. If he's out on his own, he sort of almost wants either to catch somebody or for somebody to catch him, so he's got a better race to play with.
Proper racer.
And what's happening here, by the way, because we're seeing this now, we've seen a couple of times the Proton competition car behind this Porsche car. We're kind of not really sure whether this is going to work, because they're all fought effectively, the Porsche esports cars and the Proton competition. They're all a part of the same team. In a sense, they're all co-anda drivers, and so in this sense, I wonder if there's a little bit of communication to the Proton competition team to be like, look, Loic Hartog, try not to pass Iron Juven just yet. Let him get past Dennis Lin first.
I was going to say, just to clear up, we might hear Coanda a lot. Of course, that's a big esports team down the inside. There we go. Left it very, very late. I don't think that move was intended, but had no option. It was either contact or go down the inside, and very well executed. But yeah, for our fans who don't watch esports, Coanda are a big team. They have drivers in all different outfits throughout the grid, so we may hear that name mentioned a lot.
Well, the cork in the bottle here is Dennis Lind, isn't it? The car that was on the pole position, thanks to Sebastian Job, is now dropping down the order. Any car that gets past him seems to check out. Rudy Van Buren a couple of seconds up the road now from the battle we've just seen resolved. So it does seem as though Dennis Lind hasn't got the pace yet in that car. And of course, things change as day becomes night, temperatures change. They can change the compound of tyres as well. There's so much, and as the fuel burns off, the characteristic of the car will feel different. So much to consider across this 24-hour period. We're only 15 minutes in.
And I've also just seen word from race control, at least as far as I'm aware, that number 77 that just got past Dennis Lin with a dive bomb down the inside at Indianapolis, that has a drive-through penalty applied for jumping the start.
Ooh, wow. Ooh, okay, so passing before the start-finish line, because of course it's a rolling start, so you don't dump the clutch before anybody else does, but if you pass before you get over the start line, then you'll get a penalty. Of course, the game will apply that. So the Corvette slips another spot. FDA's Nick Nielsen there he is, in the red cap and the red sweatshirt at the top. Now, Ferrari last year, 2 years ago, 18 months ago, they were based in Maranello in the museum. I mean, what a location to have your esports team. This year, they were expecting to be in their brand new esports centre at Maranello, but they are in fact in a team like us, in a TV studio, but they're in the heart of Milan, not too far away up the road. So their esports centre will come online hopefully later on during the season. By the time we get to next year's Le Mans Virtual, I'm sure they will be fully ensconced. But Nielsen, a great pro racer, very strong in the sim as well. But the Corvette just seems to have great speed at the end of the straights, and that's sort of replicating exactly what we've seen so many years in real life with the C7. So the C8 just tops out just a few kilometres an hour, maybe better than some of its rivals.
Yeah, it is the fastest on the straight, and I'm okay with saying that. They'll message me, don't you worry. But the Corvette is the fastest on the straights. Now, that doesn't mean it's the fastest around the lap, because obviously it'll lose a little bit of time in the Porsche curves, as we would expect. But then it's just about how it looks after its tyres, how it looks after its fuel, etc., etc. Don't get me wrong, through the night I'll be going through all of the details on that, don't panic. But right now, it's a good race car in a good position, unfortunately, with that penalty looming over its head. So we will see that one come down to pit speed and then have to sit in its box for 6 minutes.
And the 88 Proton, was that one of the cars that had a 6-minute hold?
No. The right. 77 Proton's the one with the penalty.
So 88 is still in the pits and is now 2 laps behind. The W Series car has yet to complete a lap, so that sounds awfully like they've had a connection issue. More battles further back.
That's a car with a problem. They've lost. Is that Panis Racing? Let's have a replay.
Here's Panis.
Here we go.
Here's what the problem was.
With Axel.
Ooh, a lock-up under braking, and the Axel car also getting held up there.
Well, innocent victims in that Axel, weren't they?
Yeah, just really
but a shame for Panis Racing, because we mentioned them earlier, they were running fairly well, but championship-wise for the 88, that is an absolute disaster, because they were running third. They were having a great season, so it's going to be over to the 77, who are currently 4th in class.
Yeah, well, 88 has now left the pit lane, but again, still shown as stopped is the 45 car. So 88 is the last running car. 111, Dennis Lind, the Red Bull car, that also had problems early on. So the Mahler car number 10 has just left the pits as well. They dropped down the order. Team WRT, of course, we saw them losing that rear wing. And here comes the Corvette out of Arnage, back past the Ferrari. So the Corvette is fighting a rearguard action already in the first 20 minutes of 24 hours. It's going to be a long race for everybody here.
What happened to Danny Yukader and Filip Dragovic?
I think that's just a timing glitch. I tell you what, here we go. We've got, this is the likes of course, Dennis. We've got the Red Bull at the head of this, fighting this one. It's a great battle. At the back of it in the Tesla car is Alex Smoliar, who raced in the FIA F3 Championship this year, racing against Nick Nielsen, who won in the GTE AM class last year as well. So great fight going on here, and I think that Tesla car is about to line up a move on the Ferrari.
Yeah, we got another little timing glitch because Dennis Lind has shown us being a lap behind everybody, whereas clearly the pictures tell a different story. He's still ahead of Nick Nielsen. And the Proton car, Luke Hartog, the 77 car.
This is great because we've got a Corvette versus a Ferrari versus a BMW as well.
Yes.
Fantastic.
That's Le Mans for you, isn't it?
And big names in that as well. This is the thing with the GTs. When I was looking at the starting list of some of these drivers starting for the GTs, obviously we know it's a pro driver that must start the car. The pro drivers that were starting in the GTEs, like you say, Mitchell de Jong, Rudy van Buren, Loic Hartog,
Bruno
Dennis
Spengler,
Lind, Bruno,
DTM champion.
Such an incredible list of real-world drivers, but they're great. These are the ones that are great in the sim.
The biggest of all, and the most successful of all, Jimmy Broadbent.
Never heard of him. Never heard of him.
56.
Yeah.
Where is the 56?
It's got a penalty as well, don't worry. It's got to come into pit lane. It's one of those ones in the 6th minute.
He's down in 15th in class. He's just letting everyone get away, and then he's going to charge through and win it right at the end.
He's got them where he wants them, hasn't he? and
he's giving them a head start. That's all he's doing. He asked for that penalty.
14th in LMP at the moment is Yiffy Ye, the man who was driving WRT's lead car on the final lap of Le Mans last year, only to have it cough and die underneath him. Well, there is our first official, that's the first time we've seen a pit caller, and again that's a long way from where we're expecting. We've only seen the leaders now onto lap 6, or completed lap 6.
Where contact is on in the pit lane, they might be coming in early to get out of the danger zone when everyone, you think of it this way, if you stay out and go as far as your tank, everyone can go about 9 laps. Suddenly, 30 prototypes head straight into the pit lane.
Yep.
I'd want to get out of that cluster.
And remember, that car has contact as well, so
I think it was the 4. I think it was the other Bicoles car that was in the contact, because that's the one that was
both are in the pits.
down.
Both are in the pits.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. Both the 4 and the 444, so all the 4s are in the pits. You saw Sergio Sette Camara come in, and Tom Dillman is in as well in the number 4 Floyd Bicoles burst. So Alpha Industries Bicoles, 444, Sergio Sette Camara. And again, watching Dennis Lind.
So the question is are they coming in early, 1, to get out of the traffic, but 2, to actually just, because the cars are not feeling as fast because they've been carrying damage the last couple of laps, get it repaired as soon as possible rather than try and do a full stint like that.
Yeah, you've got to be careful, because obviously when you've got damage on the car, especially if it's on the suspension, it's going to start pulling the car to one side, which is bad for so many reasons, not only pace, but also for tyre life as well. It will destroy tyres.
Right, driver change as well. So that I'm thinking 444, that was strategic, because they have already taken out Sergio Sette Camara and put in one of their pro sim races, David Marocek. So the pole is in 444. Number 4, though, Tom Dillman is still in, which,
big moment there for Dennis Lind.
He carries a lot of speed into Indianapolis, possibly a little more than he really did ought to be.
A little bit too much on that case. I think this is the Yas Heat car. We are having a look here. Finally, had a good race last time, didn't they? They had James Baldwin in the car that time. They'd had a miserable season, but then last time out, Yas Heat went and finished in 7th place, and they could have finished a lot higher. They took a big gamble on strategy. So it'll be interesting to see how they go. They've got Will Tregurtha in the car currently, who has raced in all sorts of GT categories, started out in Ginetta Juniors and worked his way up, and he's currently running in 4th place. So they've snuck through up the order there. I think it's actually just up the top 10, maybe in 6th place is the Yas Heat car. So a really good result for them so far. They've just gone by Race Clutch Alpine, who we ride on board with, another team who's had a bad season but look to turn it around here at the Le Mans 24 Hour.
Just going to say, by the way, confirmation about those Bicoles cars. So the 444, like you say, strategy, that does look like it's the case, them coming in. It was the number 4, got that confirmed by Cameron Roger and Rasmus Andreasen, who have confirmed from the team that it was the number 4, the championship leading number 4 Bicoles Burst Esports car that was the one that was involved in the incident between themselves and WRT. So you come here, you're battling not only for the race win, you're battling for the championship as well. And you're already starting in the first 2 minutes of the race, you've got an awful lot of damage to deal with.
They're back out on circuit now, but it does seem as though they haven't changed drivers, so Tom Dillman has stayed in, so that really was just a pit stop to try and get the car as repaired as much as possible. 1 extra minute in the pits enough to get the car back to how it should be, or will it feel weird forever now?
It should be able to be repairable. Now the thing is it will, unlike in other simulators where you get an option as to how much you can repair the car. In R Factor 2 you come in and it will tell you have this much damage. You either repair it when you tell it that you want to repair it when you come in, or you just don't. And so it's sort of, if they have repaired any damage, they've repaired all of it.
Got a lot of pit stoppers by the looks of things. James Baldwin in the pits from effectively 4th position, I think. Will Tregurtha for Yas Heat. So that's both Veloce cars effectively, because Yas Heat run by Veloce. Again, going on a similar strategy, and Red Bull Racing's LMP car also in pit lane. We're only halfway through the first stint.
Yeah, well, we expected 10 laps, but they're starting to come in a lot early, aren't they? Norby Keisha as well, the European truck racing driver, has also come in for Red Bull Racing Esports. So, yeah, drivers pitting a lot sooner than we expected. We'll see if that trend continues throughout. Of course, we did have the warm-up lap, so that might be playing a little bit of a part in it as well.
ARC Bratislava's Mato Homola in the pit lane as well, another one of our LMP pit callers. So we did have all the 4s in on that lap, 4, 44 and 444. Maybe that's just the way it was. Anybody with a 4 in the number had to come to the pits.
Was called into pit lane. No, who knows? Who knows?
Saw Eduardo Freitas there in the inset, typing away furiously on the Discord. And you know, we talked about this actually in Le Mans last year, is having done the virtual race where all the communication is by Discord with all the teams. Eduardo found it was such a useful tool. He's now introduced that into the World Endurance Championship, and at Le Mans, all the teams and race control converse constantly by Discord, which has 2 effects. First of all, it's simple, it's easily understood, everybody's got it, everybody knows how to use it, and it's instant. And secondly, it doesn't all get broadcast on the radio, which is devoutly to be wished. So it has that that double bonus. But it's interesting, you know, so much. The sim world learned so much from the real world, and vice versa. It really was massive two-way traffic, not just a whole different bunch of racers coming together. It was a whole bunch of technologies coming together. Now, in our lab with Fernando Alonso, he pointed out, of course, because of the long straights here at Le Mans, it is a great opportunity to leapfrog slower class cars. When he was racing with Toyota Gazoo Racing, there were 3 slower classes. Here, if you're in a P car, there is the slower GTE class, but as the race goes on, they will be more and more spread out, and so you will be, after lap 4 or 5, constantly in traffic, and that's where our leaders are now.
Here's Fordzilla getting themselves legitimately up into 3rd position. Yes, a couple of cars ahead of them have made pit stops, but Luke Browning has done a really good job and gets himself up into 3rd ahead of Drugovic, who was our pole man. And now this battle is 10 seconds back from Max Verstappen.
Oh, Simpson's way off.
Ooh. Comes back on.
Got scared off, I think, actually.
I was scared.
Well, watching the mirror, and you know, and that is a genuine issue for GT drivers, particularly in the Porsche curves, is that the P cars come at them at such a phenomenal closing speed that the danger is you miss your braking by looking in the mirrors and then go off, and that's exactly what you saw. Well, little pit stop there for Fordzilla, and so Real Team Hydrogen, who are one of our top teams in the Le Mans Series Virtual, they continue. They've had a pretty decent season. Luke Browning in the pits, what's he completed at the end of lap 7? We were expecting maybe 9 as a maximum, because it's a sort of 10-lap stint plus the formation lap, so you probably don't want to push it to 11.
I have a theory. I think the LMPs are going into the pits as they're approaching the pack of GT cars to avoid going through traffic, at least for one more stint.
To counter that, or to add to that rather, I did get a message from one of the people that was supposed to be driving, Dennis Jordan. Unfortunately had to step aside from the number 11 Red Bull Racing Esports, and Alex Siebel's jumped in his place courtesy of wheel issues. He said the strategy for us, avoid closed pit stalls and avoid GTE traffic. So I think that is exactly that. They're seeing the train ahead of them and going, right, I'm out. It's my time. Bye.
Although Max is just carving through them.
So why not?
No worries.
Well, Max doesn't mind an overtake, does he?
And he's got enough of a lead.
And he's on his own, and he's the leader, and while he's got that speed and that head-on, just give him free rein, let him go. If the horse wants to gallop, don't bother reining it in. You know, there's plenty of time to be reined in the next 23 hours.
10 seconds is the gap now between Verstappen and Juncadella. I know our graphics sorting themselves out right now on the TV screen, but we do have up-to-date here. There is Max Verstappen in the red line liveried machine on his own, right in the background, just coming through the shot was Danny Ukudela for Mercedes, would you believe? And there's a 10-second gap between them. Drugovich is a couple of seconds back from that. But we do have the likes of James Baldwin, who's pitted, Luke Browning, who's pitted. Those guys are going to be in the mix there too. But certainly the battle for first is between these two, and there is the gap on your screens.
Yeah, so Max, that's obviously his Skype camera. He's not actually leaning over half asleep. I know he's casual and relaxed about his sim racing, but he's not that casual and relaxed. He is in his seat at a normal angle. Danny Juncadella in second place, and Drugovich for Real Team Hydrogen Racing in third. And again, Lewis, you know, we're a long, long way away from where we start to talk about the points. And in fact, we probably won't do much unless some of our major players in the Le Mans Series Virtual strike trouble. But how many cars in LMP potentially could be the champion at the end of this race?
I mean, realistically speaking, it is a large contingent. We're mostly talking about the top 5, because it's in that sense between them, it's if you win the championship as well. That is between the number 4 Floyd Bercolles Burst Esports, 2 of the red line cars, including the number 1, 2, 3 that is leading the way, and the Real Team Hydrogen Red Line, and then a couple of others. We'll see how Nicholas Nielsen did get past Dennis Lind as well, coming up towards Indianapolis. Super tight. This was about a lap ago, just to the inside nicely. Dennis Lind not going to fight this one quite as hard as he will fight in the Porsche Esports teams early on. He's got to watch out for the Tesla R8G car directly behind him, though. So
I was going to say,
eyes on that.
Red Bull, they've got that penalty, so letting people go is a clever strategy, really. It's about damage limitation for them at the moment. You know, if people are going to go by, that's okay. You've got a 6-minute penalty to serve. There's no point adding to that penalty by fighting.
No, delay them as long as you can, legitimately. But when they finally make the move, whatever. Keep your speed up. Keep your speed up. Yeah.
Yeah, try and save the fuel. Once you've got into their slipstream, you can use that just to lift off.
Yeah.
And Max Verstappen, our leader, has gone into the pits. So as has Felipe Drugovich as well.
Drugovich has just gone in, so that leaves Mercedes AMG Petronas. Stop the count. Mercedes lead. So Danny Juncadella is leading, and he goes on to lap 10 of the race. So, and that means that Race Clutch Alpine move up into second, and Axel Sports, the SEM9 Flash axle machine. Abel Aslan, who was one of the very quick early runners in qualifying yesterday, they're up to third. Our race winners from the inaugural Le Mans 24-Hour Series Virtual, Le Mans 24 Hours Virtual, Rebellion GPX Esports, the car number 1. They lie in 4th place. In 5th place, Alpine Esports, and in 6th place, Alpine Esports as well. Car number 36, car number 15. There are, 10 cars currently in the pit lane from, 9 cars currently in the pit lane from LMP. So Ollie Rowland, we haven't spoken about him, and he's now just taken over the number 70 Real Team Hydrogen Racing car. So again, a little change over there with strategy, going straight in, 1 stint, change of driver, a change at Jota as well, coming out in the 38 Jota car. Is Ibrahim Khan. Now he's one of their sim race drivers. So where Real Team Hydrogen, number 70 car, put in a real world Formula E racer, Ollie Rowland, then some of their rivals are going the other way and getting their esports pros in. And while the traffic is still so close, that's possibly not a bad call, because they will be more used to doing that than the real world drivers will be used to doing that in really close racing. So put the real world guys in once the field is separated out a bit. You've got plenty of racing for everybody to do.
You think, as a viewer that maybe isn't familiar with esports, that you should be using these professional drivers, but really this is a complete switch over where the esports drivers are the professional drivers in a way, and the professional drivers are only that by title, unless you're Max Verstappen, who managed to go and take a front row start. But yeah, it's better to use them in the complicated stages of the race. They would have this all planned out before. They will have a spreadsheet that they would have made. Every driver knows exactly what time they're going to be in the car and for how long, so they know when they can go and get some rest, just like they would in the World Endurance Championship. They have it all planned out before.
And of course, we don't have everybody in every team in the same place. So often you will have 4 drivers in 4 different locations, and quite not infrequently in different countries, in different time zones. I mean, that's one of the glories of doing everything online, is that it almost doesn't matter where you log in from. But of course, it sort of does, because when we were talking about Le Mans Virtual 2 years ago, you know, you had racing drivers in Japan, you had them in Australia and New Zealand, you had them in the USA, you had them in Europe. So they were across, you know, a dozen different time zones, and it sort of makes sense to have your driver racing in a time zone that's better for his body clock, rather than put him in when it's, you know, the middle of the night where he is, even though it's you know, the perfect time of day in Europe. So some of these drivers may not appear in the roster you know, until daylight where they are. If you've got drivers who are in North America, then there's no point putting them in the wee small hours if you can put them in daylight while your European drivers, say, get some rest. So some of that strategy will be based on logistics, some of it will be based on how you figure the race is going, and they may well change those rosters around a little bit. If they do need to really get some pace back into the car, they might then start burning some of their pro sim racer hours where they would otherwise perhaps have put the pro race drivers in, just to get them back on the front foot again. You know, you've got to play it as a dynamic event. What your plan A is, as every engineer at Le Mans will tell you, plan A, you tear it up the minute the race starts, and then you go on to plan B, and then you busk it from there. And the more you've done it, and the better experience your team of drivers and your team of engineers and planners and strategists have, the better chance you have of making a good fist of it. But plan A never lasts. First casualty of war, plan A.
Yeah. And like you said, that they're going to change it throughout the race, particularly at the end of the race, given where they are in the race. Now, one thing, traffic is starting to come into play, because James Baldwin, the gap to Max Verstappen, they've both pitted, is really coming down. So there is the reigning Formula One world champion, 2.6 seconds behind is former world's fastest gamer in James Baldwin. So we could have a little battle for the lead on our hands very shortly, but you can never get too carried away, as you said earlier in the week, with gaps. You know, they can come down by 2 seconds and then go up by 3 seconds. So until they can see each other, until we can see them both on screen, we can never get too carried away.
Well, the good news for our GT leaders is the GTs are now back in front of all the crowd of P cars. Of course, they're not in front of them because the P cars already lapped them, but they've now all pitted. All the LMP field has pitted, so they are now all sort of back at status quo, which means Max has cycled back up into the lead, because there was no fumbling with the wheel guns, or the wrong tyres weren't there or anything. That, you know, but in sim racing, the driver is responsible for making sure his pit stop happens, so the driver has to pre-select what he wants to do before he goes into the pits. All right, we have got 40 minutes, 45 minutes under the belt nearly. Let's see what the social media is saying.
That's right, thank you very much. As I said earlier, we're trying to make this as interactive as possible, so don't hesitate in using the hashtag Le Mans Virtual. Now, it's only 45 minutes into the race, but we've already got a bit of banter, you know, some photos, everything you want, a few questions as well from you on social media. Starting with actually the official F1 account for Mercedes, showing their support, of course, to their team that are taking part. Now we're moving on to our next one. This is a fantastic little graphic here. We've confronted the clash of the titans, we'll call it. The F1 eSports champion, Jarno Opmeer, and of course, the reigning F1 champion, Max Verstappen. So we're just going to give it a bit of feedback. Who do you think, you know, is going to be victorious after these 24 hours of Le Mans Virtual? Now we're going to move on to our next. There's a bit of banter between teams. Shout out to our chief engineer, Felix Pons, and this is a little funny joke here, that of course drive faster. And we can move on to, you know, we want to know where you're watching from, how you are following this 24 hours of Le Mans Virtual. We've already got a bit of feedback from you saying you want it, watching it with your dog, your family. And as we can see right here, Aidan Brow is watching it with his little son. It looks like he's feeding him at the same time. I mean, that is luxury, isn't it? Being fed whilst watching motorsports. He is living the dream. Please don't hesitate in using the hashtag Le Mans Virtual, and one of our the social media managers that are just behind me from several social media channels. Brian's giving us a little wave right there. So just keep in touch. We want to hear from you.
Thank you, Hayley. So the race continues. 23 hours and 21 minutes remaining. We've almost broken the back of this. Nearly 40 minutes in. Max Verstappen, the race leader from James Baldwin. Gap is 5.1 seconds. Danny Juncadella in third place for Mercedes-AMG Esports, ahead of Fordzilla's Luke Browning. Wiltshire Goethe for Jas Heat in fifth place. Really strong early run from then. And the number 444 Alpha Industries by Collett. That's David Morocek in the top six. No pit stops yet in the GTE cars. Mitchell de Jong, the runaway leader for Porsche Esports. The 91 car is 5 seconds ahead of Rudy Van Buren in the red line team BMW car number 71, the red and black car. Anjan Juven for the Porsche Esport team, 9.6 off the lead in third place. So a good battle shaping up, but again, the leader in both classes with 5 seconds. We think that there's probably going to be about a 14-lap standard fuel window for the GTE cars, which probably means 12 or 13 after the formation lap when we start to see cars coming in. They've completed 10 laps now, they're on lap 11, so we may get pit callers at the end of this one if teams are trying to dodge some of the traffic in the pits, because damage is on in the pits, and that is one of the hardest times to avoid drama. Well, double Le Mans winner and one of the participants in the first 24 Hours of Le Mans Virtual, Fernando Alonso, joins us now.
So yes, I'm going to be joined in just a few seconds by Orlando Fernando. In fact, you're here. Hello, Fernando. Firstly, how are you doing? And tell us what your involvement in this edition of the 24 Hours of Le Mans Virtual is this year.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm just following the race, following the team with Alpine Esport, car 36. And yeah, I'm not able to participate this time. I had like a surgery last week and I was a little bit in the hospital, and now I'm recovering. But I wanted to follow the race. This is an amazing event, and I wanted to be part of somehow.
Of course, a fantastic race to be a part of. Have you taken part in the two? Now, when I saw you at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in June, you said that you were trying to convince Ocon to take part. What happened? Why isn't he taking part this year?
Yeah, I think we wanted to do it together somehow in the same car, and because I couldn't make it, I think he decided to postpone it. But I think, one day we will do it together. That's a guarantee.
Look forward to seeing it. So you're extremely implicated in esports and, of course, sim racing. You're showing your sport just earlier on social media. Now, why do you think it's so important as racers, racing car drivers, such high international levels to take part and be present in the esports world?
Well, I think esport and sim racing, it gives you basically the unlimited possibilities, and probably we don't even imagine right now what esport will become in the future. And we've seen these kind of events, the involvement and the professionalism of everybody into the race, which I think it can basically compare to a normal 24-hour race in terms of preparation and amount of work. So this is great to see. I think the involvement of obviously the WEC family into this project as well, on the World Championship, the involvement of the motorsport games, everything is quite glued together in a perfect way, and this is the result what we have seen today. But as I said, I think what it will bring in 3 years' time, in 5, in 10, nobody can imagine now. I think the possibilities are endless, and this is fantastic to witness.
Now, Alpine are currently developing a program and are going to enter 2 LMDH cars in 2024 in the hypercar program. Would you ever consider taking part in the 24 Hours of Le Mans again?
Yeah. I think it's in the plan. I don't know when and with who, but I love that race. I love the atmosphere. I love the endurance racing in general. I think Le Mans is obviously the best. But I did enjoy Spa, 6 hours, Fuji, Bahrain, Daytona. I mean, endurance is something that is probably the true DNA of motorsport, because that sharing the car with your teammates, with other people on track, different categories, this gives a lot of adrenaline on a driver point of view. So yeah, endurance is on the plan for the future.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Fernando, and thank you so much for showing your support.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Of course, Fernando's story in Le Mans Virtual last year was a pretty dramatic one. The team felt like they were out very early on, and they had sort of went, okay, guys, sorry about that, we're all done. Fernando then had the opportunity, or the team then had the opportunity to rejoin. We had an early server crash and the team was able to rejoin. Fernando had gone out on his bike and was out riding his bike. They had to ring him back and say, hey, we're still in the race, come on back in. And he didn't just go, I'm over that now. He came right back in and they competed all the way through. They knew they were never in with a chance of winning, but they wanted to compete in the race exactly as much as they had done at the start. So, you know, that was his tale for this year, and as you saw there, he's just kind of back at home, recovering from a little bit of post-season surgery. The story is less good, though, I'm afraid, for the W Series racing entry. Well, here is their tweet. Gutted. We suffered server issues on the way to the starting grid and never made the start. Unfortunately, we can't rejoin, so that is the end of our Le Mans virtual journey. Thanks to everyone for your support, and thanks to our drivers for their hard work and prep. Well, you know, that's really tough. First ever all-female entry in the series. And again, you know, it happens, you know, cars die in the pit lane and never make the start of Le Mans in the real world, and you can have similar problems here in the virtual. So, Chris, that's really tough, and you know, there's nothing much you can say. It's just really gutting for them, and really disappointing for all the young female fans who are hoping to see a female team competing here.
Well, it's all the practice you put in, isn't it? Particularly for the professional drivers, if they haven't done sim racing, to get to the grid essentially and then not be able to take the start is really heartbreaking. And someone that might know something about that throughout his career is Alex Brundle. Joins us now, of course. Alex, in 2020 you raced him. You're one of the only drivers in the world to do both the virtual Le Mans and the real Le Mans in the same year. How is that when you've done so much practice for an event and then you get to race day and you're not quite able to take the race? How is that?
Well, firstly and foremostly, I'm really enjoying the start of this event. But yes, of course, it is absolutely gutting for the W Series team. We can only feel for them and all of those hours, you know, you put into preparation. I was talking to Louis Delatraves before the event. He reckoned he'd put in hundreds of hours into trying to retain the title this year. And it absolutely gutting to not even be able to take the start. But even still, you know, you've spent that time, you've grown that relationship with the people that you have been building this team, have been racing with, and no doubt they will be back to have another shot at it throughout the continuation next year of the Le Mans Virtual Series, and indeed perhaps for next year's edition.
And I have to ask, racing at Le Mans, how is it at the start of the race, whether you're in the garage watching or in the car? We saw the start, we saw how hectic it was. It was all the professional drivers getting their elbows out. What is that like?
Utterly bizarre for me, honestly, to watch this, because I'm so used to seeing this from within the car. And what really hits me, actually, when I see the race panning out in this way, is that there's that heightened tension, of course, of the beginning of the race, the start, the moment the flag drops. But then as a driver, that tension never really falls away, and you don't really get a sense of it watching the race from the sideline. But you're still pushing. Now you go into management mode, start thinking about what the collateral damage of the start's been. If you're like the WRT car early on that took a little bit of a side swipe, had a little bit of contact, what are the implications of that? What's our stint plan now? Looks like drivers and teams are looking at a double stint on the medium tyres, what I'm hearing from almost everybody out there, and are going to be racing hard. One driver, 2 stints, keep the concentration up, and that stint plan will be starting to form itself towards the end of the first hour.
Mentally, that's so hard, isn't it, to then pick yourself back up, not just the stint plan, that's a whole nother thing, but mentally to say to the team, right, we've got 23 hours, 45 minutes, let's just keep pushing. I can imagine as a driver that must be really difficult to do, particularly if you're not in the car, to just keep the motivation within the team.
Concentration is everything, and I really found doing this race that the adrenaline from literally moving fast is not always there. You know, you don't have that adrenaline to keep you going through the race, and so that provides an extra bit of concentration to the mind. It boosts you up, but you really have to eat, drink and sleep just as you would throughout a 24-hour race. But all of the energy is not necessarily being used by the body, it's being used by the brain to keep your eyes hard focused on the virtual road ahead, and to make sure that you can deal well with battles like this one between Danny Juncadella and Browning, pushing him in the Ford Zilla team behind.
Yeah, great battle for second place. Third place, Danny Juncadella, just hanging on ahead of Luke Browning. Will Chigurtha, couple of seconds back down the road in fifth place for Jas Heat, and sixth, the number 444, Alpha Indus by Colles. We're expecting pit callers in the next lap from our GTE field. At the moment, Mitchell de Jong, the gap was 5 seconds. Rudy Van Buren has sliced into that. He's halved it in 2 laps. It's down to 2.5 seconds. Now again, as we've talked about so many times, whether in a GT or an LMP car, Alex, you can lose 2 seconds easily in any chicane just because there's a car in the wrong place. So it doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem for the Porsche or that the BMW is suddenly much quicker. It's just the way it concertinas.
In a stint, in a moment, in a slight sideways error, because you're on the throttle hard for so long over the 13+ kilometres of the Le Mans circuit. It's about, if you're in London, it's pretty much the distance between one side of the central area of London and the other side, the Le Mans circuit, Canary Wharf to Kensington.
So
basically.
2.5 hours by car then?
2.5 hours by car, or in this case 3 minutes and 20 seconds, which
insane.
is quite outrageous when you think about it. And that's how long you're on the throttle for. So as you pick the gas up, you know, you lose time down that next long stretch every single time. The other place you can lose a lot of time here, entry and exit of the pits. And as we're starting to see pit callers, guess what? Just because you're heading into a virtual pit lane doesn't do it all for you. Yeah. You've got to nail it on the way in. You've got to nail it on the way out. You've got to find the right pit box, because some of the furniture that we get really used to in the real world is just plain not down there.
Yeah, blokes hanging out boards going, "This way, stupid." Yeah, it doesn't exist, does it?
How did you know what was written on my board?
I was going to say,
never lies.
Do you practice that throughout the weekend then? Do you look for certain things in the pit entry? Like, that's my breaking point there.
Of course, yes.
It might be a tree or something like that.
Reference points, we put boards out everywhere. That's why it looks like another UK reference. I apologise to our global viewers. It looks like Blackpool Illuminations when you head down into the pit lane, but lovely bridges. I love bridges in the pit lane. They always help you to find your way up and down pit road as we've got more action on track.
It's very close in GTE. It's half a second for the lead. So Rudy Van Buren and Mitchell de Jong right together.
Illustrative of your point, Martin, as we see 2 prototypes going side by side. This is Canapino trying to make the move in the Rebellion, and indeed he does momentarily. Losing the position again to the 7-9 Flash Axel car as they head down towards Arnage. That curb, just as bumpy as I remember it in real life.
Managed to pick up a spot there, the 65 car, the blue and gold going through. So this is the battle for 9th place. And Nico Veroni in the Panis car getting ahead, just picking up that spot. So 5-car train, 6-car train actually. Now they're starting to stretch out a little bit. Red Bull Racing eSport car, Norbert Kisch, European Truck Racing ace.
Here it is again then, round the outside of the first part of Indianapolis. And the real road, the way this game is put together, the road will actually develop as the race moves through. I remember it very, very intently from competing in this race. Some of those moves you might be able to, just like in the real version, some of those moves you might be able to get away with early on in the race, like around the outside of Indianapolis. You will find marbles and you will find the scenery if you try, to put the car in those places late on in the race.
Yeah, or late on even in the afternoon. And you know, the sooner or the more often anybody touches the dirt coming in through the first right-hander, that gets swept out onto the track, and of course the eddies, just leave it in the edges. Like they say in oval racing, don't get in the grey because that's where danger lies. So the car that we were on board in the middle of that was Augustin Canapinto and the number 1 Rebellion GPX Esports car. Of course, they are the guys that won Le Mans 24 Virtual back in June 2020. So they are they are the defending champions. They have the number 1 plate. Here again, Mitchell de Jong with Rudy van Buren. And the BMW, the Redline BMW, 2 wins this season in the Le Mans Virtual Series in GTE. They've had a very strong season. They've always had lots of pace. You know, in such a short season, we've had 4 races up until now, and then this is the 5th and final. But in such a short season, it's hard to allow misfortune really to kind of stretch out. It hits you hard. They came into the pit, so top 2 heading into the pit lane, and that, I think, at the end of their 13th, the end of their 14th lap, is going to start to trigger lots and lots of pit stops.
Yeah, we'll probably see them. We expected around lap 14 or 15, but with that warm-up lap, I think lap 13 now is when they decided to come in. But Augustin Canapino making great progress in that number 1 because they didn't have a great qualifying. I think we're looking at one of the Floyd by Collis cars.
Yeah, that's the Jas Heat car of Will Chigurtha and David Marocek behind in 444, on board with Marocek, the Polish driver. So that's the Jas Heat car. That sort of turquoise and black livery is one of the easy ones, even for a Dummkopf like me to spot. So that is the battle for 5th position. And actually, Will Chigurtha, race winner in British GT, in GT4 and in GT3 machinery. He's had an entertaining few years in GT racing. Looks like it might well be a good spot for somebody to pick him up to go maybe to Le Mans Cup in LMP3 cars, maybe even think about heading into LMP2 as well. And I'm sure, you know, anybody who starts out in GTs, you look slightly enviously at prototypes and go, oh yeah, I quite fancy that actually. because Alex, what racing driver wants, oh no, I don't want any more speed or grip. No, thanks, this is plenty.
It does feel rather luxurious driving around the Le Mans circuit in a prototype car. I've never done it in a GT, but indeed I have raced a GT3 car, as it was called, GTD, in the European Le Mans series. And let me tell you, the work behind the wheel is significantly more without the downforce pinning you to the floor. But indeed, it does help, you know, to go to a GT car at Le Mans the first time around and get a sense of the place, understand what you're passing when you're blasting through in a prototype car, or indeed blasting into the pits in a prototype car.
Okay, so prototypes coming into the pits. 2 drivers did not come in on this lap in GTE. Sami Matti-Trogan for Team BMW GB and Bruno Spengler for the BMW BS Plus competition team. So 2 BMWs have already started to try and eke out more laps on fuel, or at least one this time. Okay, Rudy van Buren for Team Redline, another BMW, did come into the pits. That might have been strategic to come in earlier and try and avoid some of the other traffic. And actually, he's come back out ahead of Mitchell de Jong, who was the leader in GTE. So our leaders in GTE are now BMWs 1, 2, 3. The top 2 have yet to stop, but they will almost certainly have to come in next time. Danny Junkadea under pressure from Luke Browning. And that was a pretty clean pass under braking into the chicane.
However, he's going to have the slipstream, Alex, now down the next string.
Certainly will, and he may well have a go back, Danny Junkadea, but he is a very, very experienced peddler indeed. Long association with Mercedes through DTM, through GT cars. He knows how to drive a 24-hour race, and I sensed there was a certain amount of Browning being eased through there and just driving his own race, Junkadea, and indeed he is cautious through the traffic. He'll want to follow now and understand where he's slower, because it's not like they're on a different stint plan, they're on a different strategy or have anything wildly different going on in the cars here. So Junkadea will know that most of the difference between those 2 cars might be in a bit of setup, but may well be in him and the way and the pieces of track he's using and the way that he's driving the car. So here, an experienced competitor like him will be looking to learn as much as possible and use this opportunity.
Well, we just saw them blasting by the battle between Jordi Spheres and FTA Esports Ferrari and Alex Smolyar in the 888 Tesla R8G. They're now up behind Anchan Juven in his Porsche as they start to work their way through traffic. Juven third of the stoppers. Gabby Chavez for Satellite Racing has not stopped, which is interesting. So that car currently lying in 5th place in GTE, but out of sync with the others on stops.
Here's our leaders.
Yeah.
Now, I tell you what, that's a really good work from the red line, because that Porsche at the start, Martin, was gone.
Yep.
So they've done really well in the latter part of their stint and the early part of this second stint. BMW-wise, they've been better on fuel all season. You remember, every race we went to, they went longer than the other cars.
2 laps and on places like Monza, and
yeah, that's what won them the race. I think it was round 2 particularly. At Spa, they went so long on the fuel. We were, Duncan was with us that round. We were going, surely they're going to stop, surely they're going to stop. And they literally just never did. And Proton, who thought they were on for the win, were scratching their heads a little bit. But here we see Veloce, James Baldwin doing absolutely fantastic.
Hang on, that was him coming into the pits, wasn't it? Or was that the Ford chicane? So that was him coming into the pits now.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
This was the move.
No, that wasn't him coming into the pits. Yeah, so Fordzilla, great move.
It did look like him. It is him. Yeah, he's in the pit lane. So
he is now. Yes,
he's in for
it's taken a little while to pop up. Now that's out of sync, so that is a problem for Veloce, because it's only 17 laps, and we think a minimum stint for LMP should be 10. Which, even if they stopped on lap 7, which I don't think they did, not sure that's a 10-lap stint. Will Chigurtha is in as well for Yas Heat. Now, Yas Heat, again, we need the strategy laptop, which we don't have.
I'm on the...
tell us each and everything.
I'm on the guys have it, so I'll give them a message now. But I didn't look like they had a problem. They're running so high up. I mean, unless they had a bump with a bit of traffic, but they were coming into the pit lane very, very quickly. This is Nico Verone. Panis having a really solid season, but
really good
I
start
think
here.
Flash Axel have been one of the standout teams at the start of this race. You know, we look back at their season so far, Martin. They're currently down 17th in the championship out of 21. And their best result so far this season has been 13th, and they're well inside the top 10.
Well, Axel Sports really pinned their colours to the mast very early on, didn't they? This is former Grand Prix ace Alex Young, Malaysian driver, entered the car in prototypes, entered the car in GTE from Malaysia, for Malaysian team, and predominantly with Malaysian drivers as well. So very much trying to promote the sport within his home country by nailing Malaysia to the mast here in the esports game. So, you know, they don't have that history of big esports team racing that a lot of the European racers do. But again, whether they're going to end up well up in the championship or not is possibly a moot point, because if they get a big result at Le Mans, actually everything else is forgiven and forgotten. I think back to the FIA GT Championship some 20 plus years ago, Mercedes versus Porsche in the GT1 era. Mercedes won 10 rounds of the FIA GT Championship. Porsche won 1 race in France in June. Nobody cared who won any of the others. It was only Porsche won another Le Mans and Mercedes didn't. And that's the deal here. And for Axel Sports and for everybody else, you know, and that's particularly one of the heartbreaking things for the W Series entry, an all-female crew. They're coming here to try and, you know, hold their head above water and see what it takes to be competitive in this super competitive GTE field at Le Mans, and they didn't even get to start finding out where it was because of a technical issue. And unfortunately, Le Mans is a cruel mistress in the real world, and clearly is just as cruel a mistress in the virtual world. So, you know, we've seen last lap victory snatched away from cars twice within the last decade, and we've also seen cars failing to make the start. And unfortunately, the W Series entry is just one of those casualties of Le Mans.
I was going to say, the question in a month's time, isn't it, is where you finished at Le Mans, not where you finished in the championship.
Unless
overall.
You won the championship.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you won the championship but didn't win Le Mans, that's one thing. If you won Le Mans but didn't win the championship, that's another thing. If you win them both, Hail Mary. Nobody cares where you were in Monza or Spa or Sebring.
Now, Axel, one thing they have done this year is they've branched out in terms of their driver lineup. Nakib Aslan is the only Malaysian driver. It was all Malaysian last time. Now they've got drivers from all around the world, including Australia. So that's one thing they have done. They've branched out a little bit, and it is certainly working, the changes they've made to that driver lineup. Now, On screen, we are looking at our leading Porsche. This is how close it is between our two leaders, and this is for the over. We're over an hour into this race. That's a long race on its own. An hour and 5 minutes. That's how close it is.
Now, we didn't see the pass, but bear in mind, Mitchell de Jong came out of the pits behind Rudy van Buren in the red and black BMW. So Mitchell de Jong is now back in front of van Buren. Cars coming across the line. There it is, Team Redline. Well, they were shown leading the race ahead of Mercedes EMG Esports and car number 70, Real Team Hydrogen Redline, one of our lead championship contenders. Fordzilla have had a very up and down season, currently on the rise in the first hour. So we are an hour into Le Mans 24 Hours Virtual already. Goodness, where does the time go? Some of our front runners, Fordzilla in the pits, Nino Varoni for Panis Racing in the pits as well. Yes, Heat have just pitted, so too Red Bull Racing. Duquesne, one of our studio teams here, have pitted. I didn't see anybody jumping up and running around, so it looks like they remain with Boulet at the wheel, and David Nemchek for AMC Bratislava. There was that's their second driver change, I think. So further on down, you can see ProDrive. We've sort of mentioned the fact that they are here. This is a big deal for ProDrive as well. David Pittard, British GT racer and European GT racer, in the opening stint for ProDrive. ProDrive Esports, you know, they've just finished the Dakar on Saturday, or on Friday, and then here they are embarking on the virtual Le Mans. And you know, it's a show of the intent of ProDrive to get themselves involved in this and to try and bring Aston Martin into this as well. You know, not the Aston Martin factory, but AMR Aston Martin Racing that ProDrive runs in prototype in GT racing. You know, they very much want to be a part of this as well.
Yeah, well, they've bought one of the drivers who raced with Aston Martin Racing in 2020, Lasse Sorensen, and we'll remember, anyone who watched that race will remember they finished second. So Aston Martin definitely helping them out by giving them the abilities that and the experience that Lasse Sorensen brings to the team. There you can see it looks like Mitchell de Jong just checking in his mirrors, and one thing he's looking at is the gap. I think Redline has had a bit of a bad sector, maybe traffic in the other direction just going against him slightly.
Well, one of the things that slows down GT cars, perversely, is prototypes getting in front of them and stopping dead, where the GT car still needs to try and slow down. That always slows you down. One hour into the 24 Hours at Le Mans Virtual. We started with our 50-car field, all present, bar one, W Series unable to get themselves hooked in, but it was a great start from the front row of the grid for the red and black car. Team Redline, Max Verstappen, our pole man, leading out of the first corner, but Felipe Drugovich could not hold off the Flying Dutchman, who dived by through into the S's for the very first time of asking. Pole position for the Red Bull Racing Corvette in GTE, the field starting a little behind the prototypes, only 7 wide into the first corner, nothing to see here in the Dunlop curve, and the Corvette again dive bombed by Porsche ace Mitchell de Jong into the Dunlop chicane. Some contact further back, Panis and the WRT car, which then was also collected by, we believe, the number 4 by Coller's car. Down into Indianapolis, Porsche versus Corvette versus BMW. This has been the story of the season so far. Corvette has shown pace on the longer, faster circuits, and it is the car, the C8R, perfectly suited to this track. Anchan Duverne below, giving chase in the 92 Porsche car. And plenty of battle in this massive midfield and teams pack. Juan Pablo Montoya and his son Sebastian, who's there sitting riding shotgun. It's been a long time since they've had a riding mechanic at Le Mans race. Montoya's are clearly bringing that back. Sebastian racing with his dad for the very first time ever here in a virtual format before they do it for real in Sebring in March. Well, the Corvette that had qualified so well, clearly having trouble switching its tyres on a little in the race and dropping back into the clutches of the Porsches behind. Problem early on for Panis at the Dunlop chicane, making a mistake, catching themselves out, and one of their rivals both dropped down the order. In the mirrors, the car behind you may be closer than it appears, maybe more alongside than it appears. Nick Nielsen putting in a move around the outside of the R8G BMW. Again, having to be brave. Indianapolis has been the scene of a lot of our action, which often then ends up being parlayed out in Arnage. And again, more contact between our winners last time out. Number 1, Rebellion GPX Esports car, Agustin Canapinto, trying to work his way through in the S's, and just a little bit of a touch. Both seem to have got away with that without too much damage. The Rebellion GPX Esport car currently in second place, battling with Danny Junkerdea in the Mercedes AMG Esports car. First ever official entry for Mercedes in the Le Mans 24 Hours Virtual. And those cars are at the top of the pile as Max Verstappen for Team Red Line has pitted. The second round of pit stops underway at the end of the first hour of Le Mans Virtual. Martin Haven, Chris McCarthy in the studio, and our first in the studio driver swap as in the pit lane, the car, the Le Mans Cup Champions car, which is piloted here in the studio by Juan Pablo Montoya and his son Sebastian, and by our winners of the guest drives, Luca D'Amelio and Christoph Högfeldt. And there's been a driver change, Juan Pablo handing over to Sebastian Montoya. That car is currently in the pit lane, number 26, 24 car rather, in 26th position. And one of half a dozen prototype cars in the pit lane. We've just had the first round of stops for GTE, and the story at the start of the race, as well as the battles out front in both classes, was the very disappointing tale for the W Series entry, an all-female crew car of drivers from W Series and from the virtual world as well. And unfortunately, they could not get connected on the formation lap, were unable to start the race. Well, one of the big players in the race is R8G. The R8G, of course, is Romain Grosjean. He's with Alex Brundle.
Yeah, race we're going to be catching up with various team members, various stars of automotive sport all the way through the 24 hours. And one of them, IndyCar star, ex-Formula One driver Romain Grosjean. Romain, your team, R8G, are competing extremely hard in the studio with us. Tell us a little bit about the team, why you've decided to get involved in esports, and how much you're enjoying it.
Yeah, right. Yes, I mean, I always kept an eye on esport, always was interested about it. And when we had the pandemic, we had a little bit more time at home. So at that time, I decided that it was probably the time to create the esports team. And I was lucky to find the right guys, because initially it's not easy, to understand everything about it. But I think today the idea is to give a chance to youngsters really to live from their passion. I was lucky in my life that I was able to make my life out of my passion, and that is absolutely amazing. So I'm trying to do the same with the boys in eSport.
So do you have a passion for this from behind the wheel, or are you looking to be team principal at this point? You want to compete yourself or not?
Well, I love competing, but I'm not fast enough at the minute, so I need to practice a little bit more. Le Mans 24 Hours is definitively the race I wanted to do. Sadly, it just didn't work out with the move in the States and so on. So, I think next year you will see me competing, because I think it's one of those events that you really want to be part of. And, I know the boys have been working really hard. I'm glad we're in the studio. We are really, trying to give the maximum and to make it as professional as we can. So definitely want to be involved.
Yeah, I was talking to Jo van Uitert earlier on in the day. He's been pushing hard for you. Don't worry, he assured me, my teammate a couple of years ago at United Autosports. But talking about your move to the States, first year in IndyCar for Dale Coyne, bit of a culture shock for you?
Well, very, very different for sure. But I really enjoyed it a lot. I think it was a big discovery for me. And, after a few years without being able to fight for pole position or podiums, it felt really good. So obviously 2021 was a big year. Dale Coyne was an amazing team. I really enjoy. But now I've got the opportunity in 2022 to be with, one of the biggest team in the US, definitively, and maybe even in the world, Andretti Autosports. So I can't wait that we get started. It's going to come in a month and a half, so it's getting there.
So what can you do right now? Where are you in the world? And can you start with Andretti to try and get the performance where it needs to be? Or do you just have to leave it to the guys and wait until you can get back on track for the start of a new year?
Yeah, actually, you know, one of the reasons I couldn't compete in the race this year is because I'm flying to Indianapolis later today to go to the team. I went there last week. I'm going again this week, and we have got the media content there. We're starting to get things going. I'm lucky that my engineer from last year, Olivier Boisson, Frenchman, followed me at Andretti. So he knows exactly what I like in the car. I'm gonna jump in the cockpit on Wednesday. We're gonna make sure that everything is right, and on the 14th of February, we're testing his Sebring. So, you know, it's gonna come soon, but definitively I've got the right package, I've got the right guys around me, and very excited to get started in the DHL car.
We have seen you before in a sports car, in a Ford GT1. Any chance we're going to see you back at Le Mans, save you a little bit of money on protein shake maybe? It's nice and relaxing, you know. Race is very long, you have a lot of time. What do you think? You're going to come back and give us and show us how it's done at the 24 hours?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I'm praying that the calendar in 2023 is made in a way that I can compete IndyCar and I'm free for Le Mans 24 hours. You know, I think LMDH is coming. And I would love to be in one of those cars in Le Mans. It was one of the best races ever done, so definitively wanna come. And I'm just hoping really that the calendar is gonna be made in a way that I can compete. I would like to do Daytona, I like to do Sebring, Petit Le Mans, and obviously Le Mans.
We book you in. We'll book you in for all of them. Romain Grosjean, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. Good luck for your season, and see you at Le Mans very soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Super busy time for Romain Grosjean. Last time we spoke to him, Chris, he was just ready to go out for qualifying in Long Beach. So, you know, it's trying to keep on top of those time differences and keep on top of the calendar. And yeah, hello everybody. We all want to see the same field of drivers being able to go and race at Daytona, at Le Mans, at Petit Le Mans, at Sebring, and at all of the other big sports car classics. So we echo exactly what he's saying, and I'm sure Fernando Alonso and a whole load of other sports car drivers would love to be able to do the same. So, and that is coming, you know, with the new hypercar class, either Le Mans hypercar or LMDH. The convergence of rules between IMSA racing rules and ACO racing rules is going to give us the opportunity to see the same cars racing in all these different races, and hopefully those who write the calendars will work to see that. Well, let's get back to our race in hand, and the top three in LMP are working on different strategies. James Baldwin leads now for Veloce Esports number 28 car. He is triple stinting, so he has triple stinted his tyres. He is one time in the pits. And there is Project One, the white and blue, and GR Wolves.
Oh,
so
wow. Now, was that the 50?
Is that Wolves going a lap down at Molyneux?
I think that's the 56 car, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the 56 Project One car, which was in 15th place.
That's the one with Jimmy Broadbent in.
Yep.
And he's politely shown that GR Wolves car into the barriers. They're racing at the Molyneux, as you said. They're playing Southampton in 40 minutes' time.
Was that which of the GR Wolves cars was that? Was that 86 or 87? I think that was Ben Barker, who is a pro driver for GR, what was Gulf Racing, GR Racing now with Mike Wainwright and the boys. So Ben Barker, the tallest driver in the race. I can say that without knowing how tall the others are, but he is the tallest driver in the race. And there is the Wolves car back ahead of the Project One car. So that battle continues, and that's quite reflective of what happens in the World Endurance Championship. Those teams tend to spend a lot of time racing against each other in the GTE Pro field. Not necessarily leaning on each other into the barriers, but racing each other in GTE Pro. Well, let's talk a little bit again about our leaders. James Baldwin leading in, you watch that, I'll look at the timing screen. Jump in. James Baldwin leading by 4.8 seconds over Max Verstappen in 1-2-3, the team red line entry. Max stopped a lap after Baldwin. A lap after both of them has stopped Danny Yucadea for Mercedes-AMG Esports. Now, he's been in the top three since the start. That car now in third place and back out on track. He was on his out lap last lap, now back up fully to speed. Will Tregurtha is the first car that's a lap back, or is not yet to complete his 22nd lap. Fourth for Yas Heat. Damir Rocek, Alpha Industries, 444 up to 5th, Fordzilla in 6th place.
There's Broadbent in the top right of your screen. Hey, I tell you what, of course, he's racing Prague. He was racing Praguers last year in the Brickyard Championship. Had a very good debut. He announced recently that he's going to be doing that again a little bit this season. Jimmy, give us a wave. No, I don't think he can hear
he's
me.
too busy.
But yeah, of course, he did have that incident with the GR Wolves car. There's a Wolves car just ahead of him.
I think that is the GR Wolves car, Ben Barker right ahead of him. And did you see the way that Barker then took the line away from the P car? No, I need this line. I need to be here to make it through the chicane without having a big crash. Just wait, big boy. Took the line, took his spot and goes through. And sometimes you have to be pretty bloody minded when you're in a GTE car because the prototypes tend to want to run roughshod over you. Now through goes our GTE leader, that's Mitchell de Jong in the Porsche, and he needs to stay ahead and make those moves immediately, not worry about the other guys' feelings, just get by, because he's trying to win this race and trying to stay ahead of Rudy Van Buren in the BMW Red Line engine.
I think that Team Project 1 car served their penalty. They're carrying a 6-minute penalty because they've dropped right to the back. They're a lap down. So it would make sense. There he is, Jimmy Broadbent. He's very frustrated. He was just about to go through Tetrouche.
Well, that's the frustration of having the P cars coming through and taking the line away and taking the air away from the car as well. As they go by, the aero wash disrupts the grip of your car. And listen, if you have an accident, Tetrouche, you don't have a small accident. So okay. And unfortunately, you know, for 24 hours, for every driver of that car and every other, there is going to be that endless frustration with the traffic. It's tough enough getting a lap that is good at Le Mans, because as Alex pointed out, you know, you're on the straights, you're thinking there for 30 seconds of where you're going to brake, and you always overthink it. You've got to get yourself into that rhythm where you're not thinking about where you're braking. Your braking just happens naturally. Your senses make it happen, if you like. It's automatic, and that is what the drivers refer to as rhythm, where you're not going, here I am, nearly, now I brake. It's just got to be instinctive, and when that comes, when it flows like that, that's what drivers talk about being in the rhythm. And whether you do indoor karting or you're a karter, whether you race, you know, a hot hatchback or a Citroen C1 or a Formula 1 car, the feeling is the same. And just very occasionally as an amateur racer, you realise that for the last couple of laps you haven't actually thought about where you're putting the car, and you go, oh, that's what they're talking about. When the whole thing it just envelops you so much, and it becomes instinct. And for these guys, that happens all the time, and that's what they talk about, the rhythm when they're in the zone. That's what they're talking about, and that's what everybody here is trying to get. You know, you're in the car for 30, 40 minutes or an hour or 2 hours, and the more time you spend thinking about what you're doing, the slower the car's going to go. Ollie Rowland being chased by Ibrahim Khan here for Joseph's. First time we've sort of looked at the Jota car, but Khan with pressure from behind as well. Who is that behind? Let's scroll back up the leaderboard. That's Agustin Canapino, of course, who is driving the #1 car, the reigning champions.
Replay here from the LMP class. I think this is one of our Alpine cars making a move, is it? Is that the real team car?
Yeah, it's Real Team Hydrogen Racing.
Move. So there's the #1 behind them, and that was Oliver Rowland going past Ibrahim Khan. Ollie Rowland, who raced with the 2Cs Motorsport team in 2020, finished 4th, currently 7th on the road. So Ollie Rowland doing a good job here so far, but he's going to find himself under pressure. We got, in fact, this is Agustin Canapino trying to get past Ibrahim Khan now in that Jota car, and I think this move will be done fairly comfortably.
Well, you can see the gaps coming down over the last couple of laps, and once you're in the slipstream, it's a little bit like Spa when you come out of Eau Rouge with a head of steam. The car in front is basically reaching out behind itself and slinging you past. That's what the aero effect has, and he's on the inside, commands the braking line into the inside. Ibrahim Khan could have fought it, but then of course,
no point.
If the Rebellion Esports car drifts a little wide, you're on the outside, you're the little piggy that gets rolled out of bed. So there is a certain degree where you fight it, and there is a certain degree where you go, okay, I've lost that particular little skirmish. I'm keeping my speed up. I'm going to sit behind him now. Now I can lift and coast a little bit down into the next chicane, down into Mulsanne corner, down into Indianapolis. I can sit behind him for 4 or 5 laps, however much I've got long in my stint, and I can save ourselves a little bit of tyre wear, a little bit of engine life, a little bit of fuel. Maybe not enough to get another lap out of the car, but maybe. We don't know quite how close that particular Jota Sport car is. You know, this is a long lap. If you can save 12 kilometres of fuel, that's no use. You'll run out a kilometre shy of the pits. If you're close maybe to another lap, and you can sit behind a car for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 laps of your stint, and maybe just creep another lap of fuel out, that might, in 22 hours, be a massive advantage.
And it's what Alex was saying earlier as well. You can learn from the driver that's just gone past you as well. If you know they're quicker, find out why they're quicker. You know, it might be another strategy, but more likely it's something they're doing on circuit. And it was an interesting point Alex made when he said that, because it's not something you would necessarily think about in a race. You would think they've done all their learning, but this is the only chance they get with all 50 cars on the track at the same time, and you get a chance to follow these guys. In practice, everyone's trying to find their own space. They're doing their own things, but this is now the race that we're in. We should go back to red line, and just like that we do. Max Verstappen 1 second behind. This should be a fairly comfortable pass as well on James Baldwin. All right, let's have a look at a replay. This is the Montoyas. Now they have hit a problem. We did see a quick shot of them in the pit lane.
Yeah, they had a disconnect, but they are back in the race.
And Sebastian Montoya in the car, racing in Italian F4 last year, had a great season in that. Now, they're not going to be here tomorrow, and I spoke to Sebastian earlier this week. The reason is because he's racing in the Formula Regional Asia Championship, which starts at the Yas Marina circuit next weekend. So he's flying to Madrid, changing bags, straight over, and he's got to be then over in Dubai. So, yeah, he's going to be racing in that Formula Regional Asia Championship with the Prema team. Best of luck to him, and then hopefully we'll see him in the European Championship a little bit later. But here we go, change for the lead about to happen, Martin.
No, but the Porsche is going to be key here. James Baldwin is going to catch it in just the wrong place as he's trying to get on the throttle out of the corner, and Verstappen is wily enough that he will have spotted that Porsche, gone, right, I'm going to show my nose, I'm going to force Baldwin to brake late, and that means he needs to carry more speed out of the corner. The Porsche's in the way, he won't be able to carry more speed out of the corner. I'll hang back a little, I'll get the slingshot on him, plus then I'll also pick up the toe, and that's exactly what's happened. Sweeps around the nose. I tell you what, Max has, you know, he talked about how much he needs the brake pedal under him. He is so confident under braking. Now, we saw in the qualifying lap, he doesn't always carry all the speed out. It's a game of 2 halves in qualifying, but this isn't qualifying. This is about taking the position, and once you've got by, if you are slower on the exit of the chicane, it doesn't matter, you're blocking his exit. So this is a hugely committed move, and exactly what we've seen all season, all his career from Max Verstappen. Commitment 100%. The brake pedal for him is the key instrument in the car.
You know, the amount of training the Formula One drivers will do in their legs just to be able to slow those Formula One cars down. And if you want to be the best at it, you've got to do an unbelievable amount of training, because a Formula One brake pedal feels like a brick wall. You know, that's what, to get that thing slowed down without locking up and as quickly as possible is something you need to train a long time for. I remember I once tested the BRDC F3 car, and the brake pedal was so unbelievably hard. I mean, I was going 50% on the brake, and I was trying as hard as I could. So I think I only got up to 80% at the very hardest. So.
It's something way over 100 kilos of brake pressure. Now, am I wrong in thinking it's 190 kilos of brake pressure? I'm not sure, but it is. You're absolutely right. It's not assisted. It is nothing like a brake any road car driver has ever come across. Imagine not pressing the brake pedal, but pressing the clutch rest, the foot brace, and trying to make that move. That's the sort of feeling you get from a full race braking system. They are under such huge pressure to try and get the car stopped, and that power in his right foot is one of his key instruments. That and the incisive brain. You can see halfway around the lap, he's already pulled out about 2.5 seconds over James Baldwin.
I wonder what that moment was like when he was right in the toe of the reigning Formula One world champion. There must, I know he looks so focused. James Baldwin, I don't need to point out which one's Max Verstappen for 99% of you, but yeah, bottom right is James Baldwin. I wonder what that moment was just like there when he was sat right behind Max Verstappen. Of course, he's going to be incredibly focused, but yeah, it must have been a nice moment, as it will be for all these drivers racing.
Well, and again, you know, what Alex was saying is exactly the deal here. Max is, you know, he's the Formula One world champion, not the Formula One esports world champion, the actual Formula One world champion. So Baldwin here is going to try and sit behind him, and now he's a little too far behind for comparison. But in that second half of the lap where Max got by him down the end of the Mulsanne, seeing if he could get as late on the brakes into the corners as Verstappen and what it did to the car would have been a really interesting lesson for him. Now, he only had 2 or 3 opportunities to do it, and actually going into the Porsche curves is possibly not the best place to do it, but down into Indianapolis, or a Mulsanne corner for a start, then Indianapolis Arnage. You know, Arnage is a slow speed corner, but again, guaranteed Max will find more under braking there. You lose and gain more in the slower speed corners than you do in the faster speed corners. That is just one of the facts of racing life. So that, you know, half a lap where he could follow Max and try and replicate how deep he was braking. You can see James chatting away there because he is on the chat with his engineers, with his teammates, the same as Max will be. Max is keeping his powder dry, hasn't got a lot to say. But James chatting away, just a couple of thoughts maybe, you know, what are we doing, where are we going? He will be the first of these 2, I think, to break for the pits next time round. And Danny Juncadella in 3rd place, Will Jagurtha 4th, David Rocek, Nuno Pinto. So Fortill are still in the top half dozen ahead of Ollie Rowland, Agustin Canapinto, the defending champions, Ibrahim Khan and Nabil Aslan. That rounds out the top 10. Great battles down the order though, and here is another one of them. So who are we looking at here? On board with the 21 car. So this is a little further, I've lost them now, my timing screen. This is 10th place, Nabil Aslan, Imran Khan just ahead. Whoa! Split the difference in traffic. Now, that was most worrying, I think, for the BMW driver that had a prototype in either mirror. Where are they going with? Oh, that's where they went. They went either side.
I must say, just hearing from the guys with the strategy laptop that Baldwin was 21 seconds quicker than Verstappen in the pits. So you've got to think of, he only needs to really stay within that margin, because eventually he's going to gain that back, isn't he? He's going to triple stint his tyres. So he's going to be able to make that up later in the race, or his teammate will. So this is just a conservative race for him now, really. He's just got to stay as close as he can to Max Verstappen. Right, here's another look at it. One goes right of screen, Jota, and then the other car to the left. Wow.
Misread
very
the car in the middle there. That's one of the Corvettes, not a BMW. Right behind is one of our newest drivers in the field, only announced in the field today, Red Bull Esports, Alex Siebel. A German driver.
That was the Axel car. So this is the Axel car here.
This is the Axel car coming on the inside. Got by the Jota car.
It got back by into Mulsanne,
And the Red Bull car right behind. Look in the mirror. See, on your left-hand side, you've got the Jota car. In your rear-view mirror, you've got the Red Bull car as well. So that's and of course, whoever the poor soul was in the Corvette who just got blown by both his doors blown off by a prototype on the straight.
Now there's only a couple of Corvettes. Of course, we have the Red Bull. It would have been the satellite racing car, which is one of the new entries.
Yes, that's one of our Le Mans only entries. That's why I didn't recognise Gabby Chavez, Simon Sykes, Henry Sinnick, and Jimmy Nisula.
Yeah, Jimmy Nisula did the Le Mans Cup. I think we might have even saw Henry Sinnick in it, but Jimmy Nisula was one of the heavy hitters in that. Won the Nordschleife race, qualified on the 2nd row. Didn't quite go so well for him in the main race. Otherwise, he would have been racing in the car with the Juan Pablo Montoya and Seb Montoya. But still, he was really, really good in that one. But here we can see the Jota and the Red Bull drivers now on our screen. I do love this camera we get. We don't get this when we watch the Le Mans 24-hour. We don't get to see the drivers' faces, their reactions live. And that's what the Le Mans virtual 24-hour does, Martin.
Yeah. It is good, and I know an awful lot of sim racing gamers themselves and fans will be looking at the rigs going, what's he driving, what's he got, and what they do with their room, how they decorate it, what they've got up, and that's all part of it, isn't it? Well, let's get back down to Alex Brundle. He's in the social media corner.
So we've been getting in touch with everybody over social media. If you'd like to contact us in the studio, hashtag Le Mans Virtual is your way on to the screen of socials. Widespread sympathy for the W Series team, unfortunately out before the race even began on earlier on today with a server issue. Widespread sympathy from them for the fans. They put out this tweet saying suffered server issues on their way to the grid, never made the start, unfortunately, so can't rejoin the race. End of their Le Mans journey. Everybody feeling extremely sorry for them. Someone having a little bit better time are the Wolves eSport team, who are broadcasting and who are playing from their HQ, their stadium over in Molineux. And they're having a great time, a little bit of a room with a view for the Wolves eSport team to be playing with. So that's great for them. The final part of our little bit of a social hit, 192,000 viewers on Bilibili, Chinese social network, viewing the race as it's going live. Continue to get in touch with us, please. We love to see your tweets. We love to see your interactions on hashtag Le Mans Virtual as the race pans out.
Well, it's not just since the race has got underway. We had more than 1,000 people waiting half an hour before we even got into our seats in the studio for the pre-race show on YouTube. So wherever you are following the race, whether you are watching us currently on the streaming or whether you're just starting to pick it up on social media, then it is available in just about everywhere. Ferrari have got their own dedicated Italian language service. Porsche are topping and tailing every hour in German and carrying the coverage of this 24 hours of Le Mans Virtual. There is full French commentary as well. If you've happened across this in English but you are francophone, there is full French commentary as well. I think you can probably find that on lemans.org. It's on FIAWEC.com website as well in English, and I'm sure you can find the French commentary, and that is being led by Bruno Van der Stiek, the French voice of Le Mans, the 24 hours, and Marc Minari is joining him. So too is our leading car driver and our driver standards advisor, multiple Le Mans winner Yannick Dalmas. He'll be part of their commentary lineup. And there in the studio, you can see Sebastian Montoya. I think his dad might have gone off for a little moment in the VIP and possibly a coffee. I think it might be espresso time all right. But Sebastian with plenty of track on his own. Now, that LM Cup champion car is 29th in class in LMP. They had that disconnect issue here in the studio, so that's really knocked them back a bit, but he is fighting his way back up through the field. And for him, lots of time at the wheel, and that's really important. Now, prototype stops continuing. Floyd by Colles, kind of before Tom Dillman, in and out of the pits. He stays in. Alpha Industries, 444 by Colles. Sergio Santacamera back into the car. He started the car, and then there was a double stint from one of their pro sim racers. He's back in. Alex Siebel, Wiltshire Goethe, Jimmy Baldwin, all in the pit lane. Veloce, Yasheed, and Red Bull Esports. And Isaac Gillison, in fact, has taken over the Veloce Esports car from James Baldwin. The Duquesne car here in the studio, a pit stop. No extra bodies moving. A little thumbs up, little thumbs up there from the Duquesne guys who are on the studio floor with us. And we're riding on side. The monitors are still too far and they're still coming. This is the team headline car. This is our race leader, Max Verstappen. This is what you want to see at Le Mans. I can remember Fernando Alonso's first year when he came for the first time with Toyota Gazoo Racing. It rained in one of the free practice sessions and nobody went out. Fernando went out and just stayed out. Not because for any sort of silly, I've got to be out in case nobody else is, but because he had not tested the car sufficiently on wets, on intermediates, on slicks. He went out on slicks on a wet track, which got wetter, and then we could hear from the radio, the team was saying to him, okay, do you want to stay on the wets for another lap? Do you want to come in and try an intermediate? What do you want to do? He was basically trying in different weather conditions to figure out what the car did if you had to stay on slicks or felt you needed to stay on slicks if there was a rain shower. What would then happen if you went full wet? when it started to dry, which he also tried out, what would happen with the intermediate and how it felt going from slick to intermediate, where the grip was, where the grip wasn't, where it was much better, where it was only a little bit better, how the car felt, what the ride height change of putting a different tyre on made, then going to full wets and all of that. So it's all of that time behind the wheel. And you know, but that view of his car on its own going down the Mulsanne, and at the time I said, and just thought, why is nobody else doing that? It can't be that they all know so much about the car that it's invalid, but the simple fact was, he felt it was more important for him to have the knowledge to try and win the race, because it always rains at Le Mans, as it says in all the videos, rather than the other teams who had maybe more knowledge not wanting to risk a crash and damaging the car in free practice. So he went with risk and reward. He needed the reward of knowing what the car was going to do on the various different tyres in the weather, because he'd never been there before, he'd never experienced it before, and he didn't want to go in naked in terms of that knowledge.
I think that's confidence and belief in yourself, but
yes,
to an extreme degree. They all have confidence in themselves. You know, of course they do. They're racing in the Le Mans 24 Hour, but I think he takes it to another level. He's a two-time Formula One world champion. And things like that, you know, learning, here we go, we've got a replay here. Is this going to be contact down the Mulsanne straight?
No.
Oh, yes, it
was.
is. R8G. And that was one of the, was that the Williams eSports car, potentially? That's the number 8. Is that the second time they've hit problems? I'm sure they were one of the ones.
So that's Erhan Yayovsky. He is in the pits now.
Now that's one of the cars that's doing very well in the championship as well. GPX Rebellion Williams. They're 6th in the championship. Started their season with a podium.
So that was Chincic who got hit there. But yeah, but the big loser was the number 8 R8G car. Of course, we just had the boss on, so wow. Erhan Yayovsky, well, he is in the pits, or in fact, he was in the pits. That was his outlap, but I think potentially. So yeah, that's a fairly major error. What
teams,
else?
Yeah.
What else did we just? Oh yeah, we were just watching the black car with the bright green highlights, and that is the Duquesne colours. So Duquesne Prima Esports, they have just stopped.
That's an a new team bringing an all-French lineup racing here at Studio Gabriel in Paris, and Gabriel Aubry, part of their lineup as well, former vice champion in the FIA World Endurance Championship and the 24 Hour of Le Mans. So he did race in 2020 as well with Jota, so brings that experience to the team.
Now, they had a driver change, but not in the studio, because they handed over from one of their pro drivers in the studio to one of their pro sim racers. So there was a driver change at Duquesne, and it is now Maxime Delpech who is at the wheel, because it was Léo Boulet who started here in the studio for Duquesne Prima Sports. Gilles Duquesne is in the studio as well with us, and so you can see there in the inset picture, Eduardo Freitas. So Eduardo is working hand in hand with Ben Rossiter-Turner from Motorsport Games, who is sort of responsible for the overall running of the actual platform itself, the entire race. And yeah, well, you know, always good to see Juan Pablo. He's not in front of the stewards there; he's behind the race director. So it's much safer than being on the settee of shame outside the steward's office.
He hasn't been called in. He's not on that chair outside race control.
He's meandered in.
I wonder what I was going to say, I think they're looking at that incident that we would have just seen, surely, and I wonder what Juan Pablo would think of that. But they haven't had a huge amount to do since the very start of the race, but now they certainly will be busy for a few minutes in there. As we go on board with Rocket Sim Sport, Mark Gassner, the driver, they've subbed in for this race.
Chasing down the team from Alpine. This is Sasha Lehmann, one of their pro drivers at Alpine. So he's at the wheel of the Alpine car. And Rocket Esports with the livery from Silverstone on the back. So who's in the Rocket car now? What position is this for? I'm getting timing screen behind us. Okay, so this is for 8. So Sasha Lehmann is 8th for Alpine, and Gassner is 9th for Rocket Sim Sport.
And it's an Andre, then the car behind that we saw, very similar Of course, looking at the Alpine cars there, you can see the third car in queue is the Alpine Esports. So Fernando Alonso will be watching this one very carefully. He'll be cheering that number 15 car on because it is closing down. The team, of course, run by Jenson Button, the Rocket Sim Sport team. So we've got a Fernando Alonso versus Jenson Button. I'm sure both of them will be watching on, and it looks like Fernando's team, Alpine Esports, who haven't been racing throughout the season. The Race Clutch team has, but the main Alpine Esports team haven't. So they've got nothing to lose in this race, and they look like they could be about to challenge for 9th. New fastest lap, I think we might have just had as well.
Yeah, for actually what is now 6th place, because a couple of cars in front of them have dropped into the pits. Ollie Rowland, Imran Khan, and Thibaut Kazumon, in fact, for R8G. He's taken over. Has he taken over the number 18 R8G Esports car? I think he has. Or did he start it? Okay, I'm not sure. However, a bunch of cars in the pits. Ollie Rowland in and out very quickly. So Ollie Rowland starting the car, stays in the car. Where are we now? We're an hour and 48 minutes in. Did he take over at the first change? He did,
yes,
didn't
he
he?
did, yes. He jumped in after that first switch around.
Max Verstappen has pitted as well. So Danny Juncadella leads from Mercedes AMG Esports. No lap cars between him. Augustin Canapino in 2nd place, Nabil Aslan 3rd, Thierry Latier in 4th place. So again, there are cars, and actually Team Redline, Max Verstappen, is the first of the front runners who stops every time. That's because they stopped earlier in the first stint to avoid much of the prototype traffic coming into the pit lane, just to avoid any major dramas. There is the Rocket Sports car, catching up with the BS and competition BMW. And where is that currently? That is currently in 8th place in GTE. Bruno Spengler at the wheel. That's the car with the zebra stripes on.
Yeah, good, fairly good season for them at times so far, BS Plus competition. They're running 7th in the championship, a pair of 5th places so far this season.
The main issue for the BMWs in the whole series is that they have spent far too much time far too close together on the racetracks.
The red line.
That car and the BMW Team GB car have spent an awful lot of time together, and sometime too close together, and both have lost ground as a result. BMW Team GB entry at the moment, Sami Matitrogan just a couple of spots up the road, and actually only about 6 seconds ahead of Bruno Spengler. So at the moment, that's good distancing. So let's take a look at our leaderboard, LMP. You can just see 67, that's Mercedes AMG Esports, driven by Danny Juncadella. Augustin Canapino, the winners last time out, Rebellion GPX Esports. He's the new name in that fold this time. Nabil Aslan 3rd for SEM9 Flash Axel Sports. Axel Sports with a car in both fights. And then Latier for Race Clutch Alpine ahead of Verstappen. Team Redline in 5th, having stopped. And Lehman, this battle, the Alpine Esports car ahead of the Rocket Sim Sport car and the 2nd Alpine Esport car, working their way through the GT traffic in the Porsche curves. Yeah, Michel de Jong leads in GT now by 24.6 seconds from Rudy Van Buren. The BMW Team Redline need to be saving laps. Rocket Sport and Alpine coming into the pits, and who was that right behind comes in with them as well. Everybody's in.
There's a flurry,
Max Verstappen pops back to the top of the pile. So Juncadella, Canapino, Aslan, Latier, Lehman, Gassner, Andre, Cincic probably as well. Yes, he's in as well. Is that Gillison for Veloce? No, he's already made a 3rd spot, so he's actually going to go back up the order. So too will Nuno Pinto. Ollie Rowland's made a 3rd stop. So Graf need to come in. Yes, Heat have made a stop. That's them just going through the front of this shot as we watch GR Wolves trying to hold the line, the thin white line, or yellow and black line, and for Molyneux fans. Oh, we got another disconnect, a problem for...
That's contact there, you see coming down the hill. Big contact, the GR Wolves car.
So now that is another, that's the absolute in-speed car. I was going to say that's another...
That's Jonathan Hoggard in that car.
Not the England cricketer. I'm assuming not the England cricketer.
No.
Another Jonathan Hoggard. Okay.
No, he's done a lot of junior single-seater racing and some GTs in the near future, as in the near past as well. So.
Well, we had a small disconnect for the Mexico racing team. They are now back in the pits. So again, that's one of our new teams purely for Le Mans. Memo Rojas, Luis Diaz, the permanent drivers, and Alberto Gironella and Manuel de Samaniego. They are the guys who are in that car. And Gironella is in the pit lane. So Max Verstappen leading from Isaac Gillison now in the Veloce Esports number 28 car by 30 seconds. And there you can see our GTE leader, Mitchell de Jong. Nothing in front, nothing behind. It's almost like he's got a free test session here at Le Mans, and he's now nearly 2 hours into this stint. Stifles a little yawn, and there is plenty of time here at Le Mans on the straights to just kind of, you know, relax your shoulders, take that stiffness out of the neck and the shoulders and the upper back, and just have a little breathe and a think before you get to some of the corners. And that's really important, because of a long race like this. You're under a lot of pressure to perform, a lot of pressure to keep that pace up, and having that little stretch, you know, once or maybe twice a lap is really important. Ollie Rowland scything through traffic, and Kuba Brzezinski right behind him. There's the BS Plus competition, BMW Bruno Spengler, they go by him. So they're working their way through the top half dozen cars in GT now, because that BS, okay, top 8 now after the pit stops.
It's a good battle here with Rowland and Kuba Brzezinski as they make their way down to Arnage now. Having just come out the pits, that number 1 car. In the background we can see the BS Plus competition car as well. Still running 8th in class with Bruno Spengler now.
Cars in the pits.
Yes.
Now damage is on, so it's really important not to have any contact in the pits. This is down at Indianapolis. Oh, and contact.
I think that's the Mexico racing team.
I think that's why they, and actually a big hard impact like that can disconnect you from the server. So I think you're absolutely right, and that is why they were disconnected from the server, very probably. There is Sebastian Montoya being watched by Dad.
Oh,
that's handfuls of Oppo there. That looks like it's possibly not gone as intended.
No, I'm not too sure what happened to them exactly.
That was that their car? They hit the Mexico car?
Possibly. And there's the Mexico car now back in the pit lane without a rear wing, and hopefully they can get back in the race. Gironella was in the car for them, so big contact there from what we believe was Seb Montoya into the back of the Mexico racing team.
Yeah, no, his dad is now back down with him, watching what's going on.
I'm not too sure if that was a problem or if he was lining up a move and it's just gone a little bit wrong. Here they are. So this is the Le Mans Virtual Series team.
Yeah. LM Cup champions, the top 2 drivers, in fact, in the Le Mans Cup Virtual Series, getting a chance to race with the Montoyas. And again, as you said, because the Montoyas have to leave Paris fairly sharpish, they will do all their time in the car, I think, handing over from one to the other, and then their sim racing teammates will sort of take over the reins at about 1 or 2 in the morning, halfway through the race. Minimum driver stint for any driver is 4 hours in the race. So actually, they could do 8 hours and by 10 p.m. be done and be ready to pack up and leave. And then their teammates can do the remaining time. Maximum for any driver is a 7-hour maximum, but you can do no more than 3 hours in any 5. So it is possible to flip-flop 3-hour stints between the 2 drivers. It does mean you are then committed with if that's the way they play it. If Juan Pablo and Sebastian can't race on much beyond midnight, then it will leave it to their pro sim colleagues to do the donkey work. But then they are committed to 3 hours at the wheel on and 3 hours off. as otherwise they start to run into drive time issues. With Bruno Spengler looking back at Sebastian Wunsch in the Simsa Sport Ferrari, one of just 2 Ferraris in the field. Having said that, no, we don't. Satellite Racing is a Corvette, one of our new entries. We don't have any additional Ferraris. We have an additional Aston, an additional Corvette, an additional Porsche, and we did have an additional BMW from W Series, but didn't make it through. So Wunsch at the bottom, Spengler at the top.
And it just having a look down at timing, Gironella, the Mexico Racing team, after that heavy impact from the Le Mans Cup champion team, are now back in the race. They've just left pit lane.
Yeah. So those 2 cars actually not too far away. The Montoya car had lost a lap earlier on with a disconnect in the studio, and so Mexico Racing team dropping back towards them. Number 5, Williams Esports as well, you know, a strong lineup. Attila Tashi, the Hungarian touring car ace, started that one. He's sharing with Moreno Sirica, Pablo Drac and Mikel Romanidis of Greece. Romanidis at the wheel at the moment. They are 3 laps off the leader and a lap ahead of Mexico Racing Team and our LM Cup champions. So a sort of battle there at the tail of the field with cars that have been delayed. And again, the virtual world very much reflecting the real world. That will happen quite early on Saturday afternoon, evening, is that cars will have lost a lap or 2 because of incident, contact, damage or some frailty, and will then spend the whole of the rest of the race battling each other, but, you know, laps behind the leaders.
Oh, we have a great battle forming down the lower order of the top 10 in our LMP class. We've got Nikit Aslan for Flash Axel. A couple of seconds behind that is the Yas Heat car, then it's the Alpha Industries by Collis car, then the Race Clutch Alpine, then the Red Bull Racing Esports, all split by 5 seconds. Yep. So, yeah, some brilliant racing forming in our LMP class as Simsa come into the pits.
So Simsa are in, and again, you know, they were just 0.3 of a second behind the BS competition car as they peeled off into the pit lane. So just a car length or so in it. Sebastian Wunsch pitting from 5th place with Jordi Sveers, FDA Esports in the pit lane as well. Team Redline, Rudy Van Buren in the pit lane as well. Mitchell de Jong has stopped and has remains the leader of the cars that have done 2 stops. Sami Matti-Trogan leads for BMW Team GB. And again, BS Plus competition, Bruno Spengler, that BMW stays out again longer than any of its rivals. So whether they are only a further lap away from the pit lane because that's how it happened in the first stint, or whether they are potentially going to save fuel, only really, you know, the first half, first 2/3 of the race is going to tell us. But right now, the BMW looks like it's got decent speed and good economy.
And yeah, as we said it earlier in the race, it's been the story of the season. They're able to go longer than the likes of the Porsches and the Corvette. And I think as a team, particularly if you're BMW Team GB or BS Plus competition, you're in and around the top 5 of the championship, I think you should try and take advantage of that. You shouldn't take the conservative strategy or the strategy that everyone else is going to take. I think you've got to try and do something a little bit different if you want that chance to go for a potential podium, say. And it also keeps you out of trouble a bit. Look at the clear track they have around them.
Well, and the other factor of endurance racing that the fans love, that we love so much, whether it's the real world or the virtual world, is that the cars look and sound different. They are different, particularly in GT, and they have different strengths and different weaknesses. We talked about the Corvette earlier on with Lewis. He said, I know I'm going to get a lot of flack from all the Corvette guys, but it is the quickest car in a straight line, which means it's got a better top-end speed at the end of the long straights. Now, there are several long straights here at Le Mans, and that is a factor. It will lose out then, possibly on punch out of the corners, in the medium speed stuff. It might not have so great low speed traction. It might not be quite so comfortable in the very fastest corners. Every car will have its own little foibles because of where the engine is, how the engine works, how the transmission works, what the weight, the wheelbase, the track of the car is. They're all different and they all have different strengths. And if one of the strengths of the BMW is it's parsimonious on the fuel, then that's the strength you have to exploit more than any other. Don't play to your least strong element. Stack everything with your greatest strength. If your greatest strength is Max Verstappen and the maximum driver time is 7 hours, he's got to do 7 hours.
Yeah.
Not 4 or 5. He's got to do 7 hours, and not 7 hours 1 minute either, by the way.
Of course, professional drivers have to start the race, but putting him in, he can put them in a good position for the rest of the race. And at that point, it becomes less and less likely that they're going to well, mechanically, they could hit a problem at any time, but it's more likely that they won't cause their own disaster if they're out in the lead by a long way. The drivers can relax, and they don't have to attack so much when they are going through traffic. They can take their time going through traffic and not take any risks. So the risk element really, really decreases the more better position you are in the race. And having Max Verstappen in the car for this amount of time, given the pace he showed in qualifying yesterday, just goes to show that, Martin.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, battles continue on track. Pit stops continue as well. Now, once you get a couple of hours away from the start and various different strategies sort of develop, then you see various different pit stops developing. R8G now back out of the pits with Erhan Yayovski after that contact, but they are looking like they're still on the lead lap, which is good news for them. WRT also still on the lead lap despite that early drama. No, that's not. I'm looking at the wrong column there. Gap to the leader. No, R8G are a lap behind, so too Mahler, and then WRT are 2 laps back after that drama. And we have a whole host of pit stops going on in the GTE field, so still Porsche 1-2, the factory Porsche teams, those night and day liveries. There have been driver changes, so Matt Backham at the wheel of 91, Josh Rogers at the wheel of 92. And that car has set the fastest race lap for the category. Luca Colombo is in 71 BMW 10. So Kevin Stolzer has taken over FDA. Timotei Andonovski in R8G's 888 Tesla Esports car. Sami Matitrogan and Bruno Spengler in the pit lane. So I wonder whether we're going to see driver changes there. What are we, 2 hours in now, 2 hours and 4 minutes from the start of the race. So it's not a bad time, maybe, to start putting somebody else in. Don't forget, no driver is allowed to do more than 3 hours in any 5. So realistically, with a 4-driver lineup, that would be 3 hours at a stretch. You're unlikely to want to get back in after just 1 hour off, and that would be against the rules anyway. So we could see a couple going, but it does look... Jack Keithley in Team GB, and Javier Raivio is in at BS Plus competition as well. So there have been, wholesale changes. Kevin Van Doren in the 77 Proton car, Sebastian Wunsch remains in Simpson Sport. So lots of changes of driver lineups then. So sort of 2 hours in a GT car. That might be sort of how they're slicing it up, which is effectively 3 stints.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good number to go on. In the GTs, that's 2 stops.
A double. It is actually a double stint, isn't it? So it's more than 50 minutes. It's
now they're
very nearly an hour.
We expect them to be single stinting on the soft tyres, but that's 2 full stints, 2 hours in the car. That's that's not too much or too little. I'd say that's a good time then to jump out and have some rest before handing over to someone else.
Yeah. Because as all of our pro drivers discovered in the build-up to Virtual Le Mans 2 years ago, it's not a physical strain, it is the mental strain, which all the sim racers probably didn't really realise, because it's all they know, because there's not the lateral G loading, there's not the vibration, the bouncing around that you get in these tumble dryers that are real race cars at Le Mans. It is all mental. You have to know, you have to think, you don't feel what the car is doing. It is all done between the ears, and that's what makes it more of a strain than perhaps you might think, because he's actually just sitting in a seat in his spare room or in a race room somewhere. Physically it's not demanding, but mentally it is extremely demanding. For the same reason air traffic controllers don't do more than an hour at the time, because it fries your brain, and that's not a good thing when you're controlling fast-moving aircraft. Now, is that
It's the Yasheet car.
Is that a change of nose? Is that an all-black nose? Didn't they have more turquoise on the nose earlier in the season? I'm thinking. Anyway, has been a driver change in Yasheet.
Yeah, Pejic is in the car, so they are chasing down Aslan. We did mention the bottom down the battle down the lower order of the top 10, and this is exactly it. Yasheet chasing down Sem9 Flash Axel Racing, and this is a battle for 7th place. And just behind you can see Sergio Sette Camera in that yellow and silver Alpha Industries by Collis car, just trying to close down as well. And then Tom Lartilu next along. But here is Max Verstappen leading the way by just under 30 seconds. And back with us here is Ben Constanduris.
A good moment to switch around, you said a few seconds ago, and that's exactly what myself and Martin Haven will be doing. 4-hour stints for us commentators across this 24-hour race, so hopefully that works out.
Double stinting.
We are double stinting, and hopefully it doesn't tire us too much, but great to be following the first couple of hours as a spectator like you guys out there. Thank you for all of the comments across all the different channels. There's so many different channels to watch, including, of course, lots of people upset by Jimmy Broadbent's penalty because of, well, they're just watching Jimmy Broadbent, so anything he does is God. But lots of different platforms and opportunities to watch Le Mans Virtual. And Max Verstappen still aboard this lead car. Different strategy to the pursuers behind, of which most have now changed their drivers, including Veloce and James Baldwin out of his car. Be interested to talk to James Baldwin to find out how the car felt after a triple stint on tyres. It looks as though Redline are double stinting, and that is why the gaps have ebbed and flowed over those first couple of hours. A little tricky on our strategy computer to exactly work out what's going on. Not the easiest. We haven't got the same one as we had last time, and we haven't got the same one they have in WEC, but there's still data to be analysed, and luckily we've got a very clever man in Lewis McGlade who's doing it.
Well, you know, you might ask, well, why aren't Redline triple stinting? They're in the lead. You know, they don't need to do that strategy. The double stinting is your normal strategy. That's the one you would go to if you're doing a 24-hour race. The triple stint is the alternative strategy, if you like, and Veloce are the team chasing. They are also the team not fighting for a championship, so they can afford to do something different. Replay, Ben.
By Collis on the inside, Williams on the outside. Oh, and that is that's our championship contender, the number 4.
No, I think, was that the Alpha Industries car in the 444?
Kind of seemed to lose it slightly under braking, which put the car to the left-hand side and across the gravel. Contact with the 22 machine. And where's 22? So that is JPX Rebellion. And Shijic is aboard that machine. I think that might have been a battle for position with Tom Dillman in the 4.
Yeah, I agree, because the 444 is much further up the road, so it's gone from bad to worse for that number 4 car. They had that incident at the start of the race, and Tom Dillman, who we all know from racing in the likes of World Endurance Championship as well. But Ben, back over to you.
We're actually heading over to Alex, who has Marc Genet, part of the Ferrari family for many years.
Hello, hello, and joining us on the virtual pit wall, 2009 Le Mans winner, Ferrari brand ambassador, Marc Genet. Marc, where are you in the world right now, and how's it going there with your preparations for this event with Ferrari? We look to have lost Marc momentarily on the screen, but Ferrari making an incredible contribution to this event. I believe they've set up an entire... setup there at Maranello to play the game, to prepare for the Ferrari Driver Academy intense challenge for the GT class of this event. Let's go back then to commentary, and we'll reconnect with Marc Genet in just a moment.
Well, here is the 51 machine. Kasper Stoltz aboard that machine right now. In the FDA Academy team, they have just the most incredible lineup of drivers. Okay, massively focused on the F1 Esports Championship because they had a drivers' champion in David Tonitza, who has also shown in other platforms as well. They entered a full works team into our first edition with Charles Leclerc, Antonio Giovinazzi were two F1 drivers at the time. Alongside, I think at that time was Enzo Benito, I think, part of the Ferrari family. And it was just an incredible lineup, but it didn't go their way 2 years ago, 18 months ago. And so just the one works entry this time, but someone like David Perel, who has become a sort of pseudo works driver in the real world for Ferrari, doing so much, has a massive amount of sim racing experience with his company, the SimGrid.
Yeah, Nicholas Nielsen and David Perel raced together 2 years ago, so they're familiar with each other. They've bought drivers who all raced with each other, well, who all raced in 2020. Casper Stoltz also was racing alongside Nielsen and Perel. It's just Jordi Zviers who has joined, who was in one of the AF course cars as well in 2020, the one that finished 7th in the GTE class. So yeah, they've brought in great experience. In terms of this season, well, they haven't really had the best of fortunes. They're one of the sole Ferraris. There's only two of them, FDA and Simsa, and they are down in 10th. So they've struggled in comparison to the Porsches and the BMWs. Their best result came at the second round in 6th place, which was their personal best result overall. So, yeah, FDA Esports, they've got nothing to lose here, really. So let's see how they get on over the next course of the 24 hours.
Well, we're channeling the spirit of endurance for you and trying again with Marc Genet over at Ferrari's challenge for this Le Mans 24-hour virtual event. Marc, where are you in the world right now? And tell us a little bit about Ferrari's engagement with this event.
Yes, I'm in Milan, where we have in the room where I am staying, we have the two pro drivers of the Ferrari 51, Nielsen and Pereira. So I'm following when they are driving. Nielsen, as you know, he just did the first stint, and he should go driving later on, one of the pro drivers of Ferrari. And we are just showing the world, that how much Ferrari is involved also in all the esports and the simulator virtual world, and yeah, we're going to be doing a 24-hour dedicated channel, and following you as well. And it's nice because I've been always very close to this race in the past, because when I was racing there as well, and it's just so nice to see that the virtual world can get so close to the real thing.
You won this race back in 2009. You've won the real thing. What experience have you passed on to the? Of course, you have Ferrari pro drivers jumping in the cars, doing the job, but also sim racers who are looking to take the maximum out of 24 hours, which. Although there are many sim races over 24 hours, Le Mans is pretty specific, isn't it?
It's very specific, probably on the driving as such. Because I raced in the LMP1 class always, and the GT, as you can see how much they are being aggressive over the curves. On the LMP1 car, you cannot be just so aggressive, but for sure on the mentality of Le Mans, how to have the right approach. For example, Nielsen, when he started P9 and he moved up to P4, he was taking the amount of risk necessary, not more, not less. This is a team effort. Le Mans is a team effort. In Formula One, you don't think the same way throughout the race. So I've been talking to them more about that. About the fact that you have to make sure no mistakes, take care of the car. There'll be opportunities. Always stay within the lap of the leader, and then the night always is full of surprises. You just have to. And normally the car who stops the less is the car who wins the race. There's certain things that you tend to see them year after year, and you just want to remind the drivers that when they get into the car, they just don't get too obsessed about their stint, and they see more the big picture of that race.
Your tremendous experience, of course, incredibly useful for Ferrari in the real world as well, with the advent potentially of definitely of the Ferrari hypercar in the next phase of endurance racing, the hypercar era. We're all so excited about. Potentially a testing role for you, and if not a testing role for you, then where do I sign?
Yeah, I have to say it's great news to see Ferrari come back into the top class after many years. I think when I was racing at Le Mans, there were three cars or three manufacturers in the top class. Now there's going to be so many that I don't think ever in history Le Mans will have so many manufacturers. Ferrari, of course, one of them. and we'll see. I'll talk to Corse Clienti and see how can I help them. I'm a bit probably even a bit old to do the official test driving role, but I do think I can benefit because my last Le Mans was in 2014 with Audi. Then I joined Le Mans with a Nissan project, which wasn't, it didn't work very well anyway, but my last official Le Mans entry was in 2015. So it's not such a long time ago. And I think I still can help somehow Ferrari when they approach the hypercar era.
You absolutely can. Great experience. Mark, thank you so much for spending this time, taking the time out of your race. Best of luck to you with the Ferrari Driver Academy car for the rest of the race, and catch up with you a little later on. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know about you, but 2015 seems like a long time ago for me. Really long time ago. Little Jill going out on circuit. That's the Mercedes AMG, I should point out. I was corrected earlier on Twitter. The Mercedes AMG Works team. Not a huge amount of Mercedes going on the livery. The fin there has got the silver arrow on it, and that is a Mercedes versus Ford battle, because that is the Fordzilla car just behind them.
Great battle. Mercedes AMG doing very, very well so far, running in second place. So a battle inside our top three. 46 seconds back from Team Redline so far, but Daniel Kadea brings a lot of experience. We've got a pro driver versus a sim driver here, but very, very evenly matched, which shows we said this a little bit earlier, the level that has increased from the professional drivers. Here's a little replay as we saw that pit stop going on.
Pro Drive Aston Martin being lapped, and a very easy pass there for the recovering Rebellion GPX car. I think that's the 22 that we saw off circuit a little bit earlier on, and it really does feel as though the other car just backed out of it.
Yeah, that was Marcel Chinchik in the number 22 going past Devin Braun.
Yes, so Rocket, so that was for 13th. That was a change of position. There is Max. Nuno Pinto now in pit lane for Team Fordzilla. He'll be jumping aboard that 966 machine. Verstappen yet to hand over to any of his teammates, and you kind of get the thought that, Max Verstappen's one of the very best in the world, but there's also a huge amount of expert drivers in that team. Maximilian Beneke is the star sim name there. He is the most performant driver on the iRacing platform. He has, I think, still the best rating that there is. Doesn't necessarily mean that when you change platforms you're at the same performance. There are different feels to every platform that you play in sim racing, but the philosophy is still the same. And when you look at the likes of James Baldwin, who can be incredibly fast, as we've already seen for Veloce in this particular platform, he's won on other platforms. I think if you're a sim racer, you're a sim racer. You can really race on any different platform, and it's the best sim racers are the ones that can jump from X to Y to Z.
Just like professional drivers, who can jump from a single-seater to the World Endurance Championship in an LMP and then can go and race in a GT car as well. I think the philosophy is the same in esports racing as well. They can jump platforms, cars, championships very, very quickly, and that's just due to the amount of practice they do. But yeah, it takes your very, very talented drivers to be able to do that very well.
So out of position a little bit is Isaac Gillison right now, because Veloce have got this slightly weird alternate strategy where they pitted halfway through the first stint, and that has put them off sequence with everybody else. It might play out as we get to the end of the race, because flat out it doesn't look quite as though the LMP2s can do a full hour. So the fact that they sacrificed half an hour at start means that actually by the time we get to the end they might all have the same pit stops. But it does mean that Veloce are an alternate strategy, and they do rise and ebb and flow through this field as the strategies play out. The guys at the head of the field at the moment, the top 7, have only done 3 pit stops, and as you look further down the top 20, there's others who've done 4. So considering we are only a couple of hours in, there's plenty more to play out, of course, but it does mean you're not fighting the same traffic at the same time. Lots of traffic at the moment for Isaac in that white Veloce car to get past some of the GTE machines, and he's being chased by the first of the Alpines, and then just behind is the second one. So that's the Fernando Alonso-based livery that we saw Fernando do our track guide, and then behind is the 15 car with Andre aboard right now.
Yeah, the Alpine Esports team going along very well, both of them inside the top 10. Sadly, the other one we saw involved in an incident, dropping down the field, but these two teams going along pretty nicely, and there's still a long way to go. And as Martin Haven always says, you just got to stay out of trouble and stay out of the pit lane. And so far, that's what the likes of Alpine Esports are doing. So I think they'll be fairly happy with their progress, particularly Alpine Esports, given they've not done any races this season. Remind our viewers, this is part or the conclusion of the Le Mans Virtual Series, of which we have had 4 rounds, which started back in September, where we did the 4 hours of Monza and then the 6 hours of Spa in October. November saw us do the 8 hours of Nordschleife, and then just a few weeks ago we did the Sebring 500. So those teams who have done all of those races have a lot more experience in Le Mans virtual terms. For the newer teams jumping in, they've got that challenge of adapting.
Into the pit stop sequence again for the end of, I say an hour, but it's not quite an hour. There is the red line car, and that has made its 4th pit stop now. So not at the top of the timing screens like you would expect, but says they're only in 2nd position with the Works Porsche just ahead of them. And therefore, the Rebellion GPX Esports Williams run machine in 3rd position, right under the gearbox of Redline. I'm surprised that Max is still aboard that car.
It does seem strange, doesn't it? It's we're over 2 hours into this race, but Max Verstappen feeling that he wants to potentially get half. Well, he can only do 3 in any 5, can't he? He's got to get out of that car soon.
Yeah.
In the next 40 minutes.
Yeah, so one more stint, and
one
perhaps
more stint.
Slightly a short one.
That's going to be tight, isn't it?
Kuba Brzezinski gets past him for 2nd position in the car that won last year. And let's see if Kuba can now start stretching his advantage. We do also have this slightly confusing thing with new and used tyres. New tyres obviously going to be faster than the used tyres. I suspect Verstappen will need to confirm what Verstappen's on tyre-wise after that last pit stop. And a pit stop of around a minute is enough for a full tank of fuel. A minute 20 is when you're looking at potentially changing tyres. Oh, Max having to find a bit of room to get past the Porsche going into Indianapolis there. That's the first time I think we have seen an LMP car overtake Verstappen and set off into the distance. So I would suggest that Max is on the same tyres that he was on previously, and Kuba perhaps has got slightly newer tyres, although Kuba hasn't yet pitted. We still are owed a pit stop from the number 1 car.
Now, if you are watching along and thinking, I wouldn't mind trying a little bit of esports as well, we Sport Buff are giving you a chance to get started in that. We are going to be giving away a Thrustmaster T248, and you can do that by watching the stream over on the Traction GG Twitch channel and play along on Sport Buff for a chance to win a Thrustmaster T248. The top 3 at the end of the stream will automatically win a wheel and pedals, but there is also an hourly raffle for a random person in the top 50 of the leaderboard too. So it is all to play for. So head over to the Traction GG Twitch channel and play along on the Sport Buff. And at the end of it all, if you've got enough points, you'll be walking away with a wheel and pedals to get yourself started in the world of esports. And of course, if you are just getting started in the world of esports, don't forget, we had the Le Mans Virtual Cup as well, which was open for anyone to enter. It ran throughout 4 of the rounds. Each round you had to qualify, so it weren't like you had to qualify before and then you're in the whole championship. You had to qualify each single round. No matter where you qualified, you still took part in the race. and the top two at the end of it all are competing in this race alongside Juan Pablo Montoya and Sebastian Montoya. And no doubt similar opportunities like that will be coming up via Le Mans Virtual in the future.
And so many of these competitions in the sim racing world are open to everybody.
Yeah.
As long as you're fast enough. And, you know, as an event organizer myself,